Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilfred, good morning from me as well. Thanks for being with us.
The Mandelson files, thousands of pages to be released today, exposing more details over Peter Mandelson's appointment as US Ambassador.
A 13-year-old girl dies after being pulled from a river, bringing the total number of deaths linked to the heat wave up to 17.
Cuba's crumbling health system. Sky News goes undercover inside the hospitals that were once celebrated as a model for developing nations.
We'll also be hearing today from women who say they've been left with life-altering conditions after using the contraceptive injection Depo-Provera.
Plus, a party 22 years in the making will bring you all the scenes and celebrations as more than 500,000 Arsenal fans descend on North London to celebrate their Premier League success.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. We're getting the second drop of the Mandelson files today. Hundreds of text messages, emails and WhatsApps, which means another potentially bruising day ahead for the Prime Minister.
The decision to appoint Peter Mandelson to the role of US Ambassador has haunted Keir Starmer's premiership and sparked fury among Labour MPs. Peter Mandelson was sacked last September, of course, just 7 months into the job over his relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, and he was arrested in February.
So just to run you through what we are expecting today, because there's going to be a lot of it, right? As expected, the files are going to run to over 1,000 pages. Just to put this in context, it was just 147 pages last time, so a lot more expected today. So it's going to include, for example, text messages with government ministers and also this man, the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. So also worth keeping in line, of course, anyone potential leadership challenges as well, any messages, any links they may have to Lord Mandelson. But we are not expected to see the UK security vetting summary, and this is because the Met Police have actually asked the government to withhold the documents. So I guess this is an example of the kind of dance, if you like, that the government is doing between trying to be transparent but also being limited in everything that they can release because of that ongoing criminal investigation as well.
We'll be talking to the government about all of this. James Murray, the new Health Secretary, joins us in just a moment. But Lucy's joined us as well before that to give us some of the context of this. And it's going to be another difficult day, no doubt about it. But we were discussing this earlier. There's a lot of the damage from this appointment and subsequent dismissal has already been done.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. Whenever we discuss Peter Mandelson, the questions around his appointment, we always make the point that this is just a constantly developing story. There will always be another development, which is part of the problem for Keir Starmer. It always comes back. I do think potentially people in Downing Street might be thinking exactly that. The damage has already been done. We kind of already know that Keir Starmer was aware of the relationship, but he argues not the extent of it. So there is that, and people are worried, aren't they, about the cost of living? They're worried about their summer holiday. They're worried about what's going on in the Middle East. But it's also not just about what people at home think about it, because his MPs, every time more comes out about this, it just infuriates them more, because it always comes back down to Keir Starmer's judgment. In the first tranche of documents, a number of things were revealed, but among them that the Prime Minister was warned of the possible reputational risk of appointing Peter Mandelson to that role. That was damaging. Also, his National Security Advisor said that the process was weirdly rushed. So that there are a number of things, and it always comes back to Keir Starmer. And ultimately, the decision that whether it was his advisors or not, it was him that gave it the green light.
Lucy, can I ask about the transparency part of this? Because we're expecting a big dump here, like over 1,000 pages, right? Is the feeling that actually the government is being as transparent as they could possibly be in the circumstances, given, of course, there is also this active criminal investigation? Or actually, as some people are saying, too much is being redacted?
The criminal investigation makes things more complicated, doesn't it? And there's been... Darren Jones, the Prime Minister's kind of right-hand man, if you like, was in the Commons fairly recently, and the Conservatives were accusing there of being a cover-up because of all these redactions, because of national security, international relations. So, for example, messages about Donald Trump we might not get. And these are the type of things that MPs want to see, because one of the arguments about why Peter Mandelson was appointed was because it was felt like he might be the best person to work alongside Donald Trump. So I kind of think part of this process has been somewhat undermined by those redactions. I think people are fairly forgiving of the fact that the odd thing might have to be kept away, but it feels that there will be questions about what we aren't seeing today, and that's unhelpful, isn't it? You know, this isn't just a full transparency dump. People will be saying, well, actually, what aren't we seeing? Lucy. So, yeah, a number of things to pick apart today.
Of course, we'll be across it here on Sky News when it happens, Lucy. For now, thank you, and we'll be joined by the Health Secretary at 7:15.
Now, really sad news. A 13-year-old girl has become the latest person to die in UK waters in just over a week. So just to put this in context, 17 people have died in a period of just 8 days. Really, really shocking figures there. Olivia Guthrie is here. So, Olivia, just tell us about this latest case about this girl.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, as you say, completely devastating for her family, and they are now being supported by specialist officers in the police. Obviously, we've had these record temperatures in this heat wave, and people have understandably taken to the water to try and cool off. But we have now had, as you say, 17 water-related deaths as a result, and many of them have been children, including this 13-year-old girl. Now, she got into trouble in the River Wharfe in North Yorkshire, and she was pulled from the water by emergency services and taken to hospital, but she very sadly died after getting there. And she follows a couple who got into trouble in Lancashire. A woman in her 60s has died, and a man in his 60s is in a critical condition in hospital after they tried to rescue their dog at Rossall Beach. Now, the emergency services say that the dog is safe and well, but obviously this couple have had a life-changing time, and this poor woman has now died as a result of it. Now, this morning, South Yorkshire Police said that they are still searching for an 11-year-old boy who went missing in the River Don in Mexborough. Now, members of the public say that he was seen getting in the water, but that he hasn't been seen getting out. His family are also being supported by specialist officers, and they are urging members of the public not to get involved in the search. They say that they have multiple agencies now looking for him, and they will keep us up to date on how that search is going. Now, obviously, forecasters are now saying that this week is going to be cooler and that we've even got some thunderstorms coming. So I suppose the upside of that is that will bring an end to this awful spate of deaths that have resulted as people have been getting in the water. As we say, 17 people have died in the last 8 days.
Olivia, great stuff, thank you. To the Middle East now, and airstrikes have resumed between the US and Iran over the weekend as each side claims to have hit military targets near the Strait of Hormuz. There's also been reports of air defences in Kuwait, where a major US base is located, intercepting missile and drone attacks.
So the US Central Command posted this on X, the social media platform. The measured and deliberate strikes occurred on Saturday and Sunday in response to aggressive Iranian actions that included the shoot-down of the US MQ-1 drone that was operating over international waters. US fighter aircraft swiftly responded by eliminating Iranian air defences, a ground control station and 2 one-way attack drones that posed clear threats to ships transiting regional waters.
Meanwhile, President Trump posted this on Truth Social. Iran really wants to make a deal, and it will be a good one for the USA and those that are with us.
Now, in the past 48 hours, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has spoken with the leaders of Lebanon and Israel. Now, this came after Israeli military forces made their deepest incursion into Lebanon in 26 years. So they seized this strategically important castle that you can see on your screens right now, footage from the RDF themselves, despite the ongoing ceasefire.
A US proposal reportedly would see Hezbollah halt all attacks on Israel and Israel refrain from escalating operations in Beirut. I think highlighting over the weekend, I guess, the difficulty of this peace deal coming to fruition because of the multiple parties. It's not just two countries negotiating. But just on those two countries, clearly over the last 24 hours, there have been military exchanges once again. So unsurprisingly, you see oil up 2% this morning, $93 a barrel on Brent. It got right down to those low 90s on the optimism again over the weekend. But guess it's a reminder on all those different parts, you know, believe it when you see it, as opposed to the very positive rhetoric that we keep getting.
The other major global story we wanted to update you on this morning is the Ebola outbreak. It's seen some new possible cases spring up in Brazil and also in Italy.
There have been 19 new cases detected in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is at the heart of the outbreak. And it brings the total number of confirmed cases up to 282, with 14 deaths.
So just to give a bit more detail on these suspected cases outside the DRC, which of course is the epicentre, 2 cases investigated in Brazil, 1 patient travelling from the DRC, of course. The second went to Uganda, which of course has this shared border with the Democratic Republic of Congo and also has confirmed infections. And Italy also investigating a potential case after a patient with symptoms admitted to hospital after travelling from Central Africa. I mean, the point that I would make with this story is that the DRC, one of the poorest countries in the world, a healthcare system that is simply not fit for purpose, this awful fighting that has happened for many, many years, and having a state like this, which is, you know, effectively a failed state, it has consequences. For the people living in there, obviously, who are going through this awful outbreak that they're struggling to contain and to control, but also to the rest of the world as well. You know, it's not something that we can just kind of put our fingers in our ears and think, oh, it's not going to impact us either. But yeah, very worrying cases, of course, across the world. But that epicentre in the DRC clearly not being brought under control yet. Yeah,
absolutely something to keep our eyes on, sadly. Now to some extraordinary reporting from our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, looking at Cuba's once celebrated public health service, which is now in tatters.
So he's found hospital wards without power or supplies, buildings close to collapsing after years of mismanagement, US sanctions, and now an oil embargo as well.
Stuart and his team have gone undercover in Cuba to see the extent of the problem and the impact it's having on patients.
There's a feeling something big is going to happen to Cuba. It's a country in the midst of an energy crisis, under pressure from the United States, and its government perhaps struggling even to survive. For a week, we filmed undercover in cities across Cuba, documenting a collapsing health service. Well, I'm back in Cuba, and I have to say conditions here are worse than they were the last time I was here in March. The government blames the problem, particularly with power, on the American oil embargo. But this is turning into a crisis for the country, no doubt about it. We're looking specifically at what's happening to the health service here, and particularly looking at hospitals and how they can cope.
Do stay with us for more of Stuart's reporting. He'll be joining us live at 8:15 and again in the 9 o'clock hour, so we'll go into that in much more detail. And more broadly, of course, the situation in Cuba, which has been another one of President Trump's key focal points on the foreign policy side in recent months.
Now, that's an important developing health story we want to bring you next, because a group of women have told Sky News they've been left with brain tumours, blindness and other life-altering conditions as a result of using the contraceptive injection Depo-Provera.
They're now suing Pfizer over the alleged long-term effects of the drug. Sky's Conor Gillis has been speaking with them.
And were you given any warnings? What were you told about the risks involved here?
Nothing really, I can't remember.
Certainly not brain tumours?
Definitely not brain tumours, no, because I wouldn't have stayed on it.
For 20 years, Kirsty used the Depo contraceptive jab. She was told it was safe. Now her life is lived through a blur.
Basically can't see out of the right eye. Like I say, it disfigured my face. So it was confidence, it affected my mental health, because a lot of people ask questions like, what's wrong with your eye? And I know they're just curious, but it totally destroyed me. They're saying that within the next 15 to 20 years, I might lose the sight in my left eye, which is my good eye, because of it overcompensating for the right eye.
Millions use these injections worldwide. Recent studies suggest long-term use carries a higher risk of these tumours. They aren't usually cancerous, but can cause blindness, seizures and memory loss. Tammy used the same Pfizer-made jab for 15 years. She was diagnosed with 4 brain tumours after her symptoms were initially dismissed.
I was told I had dry eye, and to just leave, go home, you're not getting a scan. That was on the Thursday. On the Saturday morning, I woke up and my right eye was bulged out.
Were you given warnings that this could be a possibility of brain tumours?
Never. The French did a study and managed to link, you know, meningiomas to the use of oestrogen, so Pfizer's depot. Then, yeah, they gave that information to the UK in 2024. The government needs to take hold of this. The NHS need to be actually, because the problem we have is people saying it's a very small chance. OK, that is true, but consistent use of this drug for more than a year increases that chance of meningiomas.
Kirsty was told her condition was just one of those things, but with her permission, we've obtained medical records that suggest a possible link in black and white. Her doctors have written to her saying, please now stop the injections as they can promote the growth of meningioma or brain tumours. A legal fight, US-style class action is now underway here in Scotland, possibly worth hundreds of millions of pounds.
You can't put an atomic bomb equivalent of a medical device on the market and put a warning on it and think you can get away with that. It's just not that simple. The product wasn't safe, the warnings were not clear, and the women have suffered the most horrific injuries. They are entitled to compensation.
Pfizer say patient safety is their priority. For years, these women trusted a routine injection. Now they're left wondering how a simple choice became a life sentence. Conor Gillis, Sky News.
Well, in response to that, we have spoken to a spokesperson from Pfizer who issued the statement. We conduct a rigorous and continuous monitoring of all our medicines, including assessments of reported adverse events in collaboration with health authorities around the world. Depo-Provera has been approved in more than 60 countries. People should talk to their doctor, pharmacist or nurse if they have any concerns or experience any side effects. I'm very pleased to say we are joined by the new Health Secretary, James Murray, who was previously on this programme, you'll probably remember, with his other hat on, his previous hat on, in the Treasury, but now replaced Wes Streeting. First morning round as Health Secretary. I mean, it's a huge job, one of the most important jobs in the country, not just in government, right? What kind of Health Secretary do you want to be?
I want to be a Health Secretary who listens to people and their experience of the NHS. You know, if you ask anyone around the country, what do you think of the NHS? You don't have to persuade them to respond. You know, they'll tell you how it helped them and their family. They'll tell you what you should do to change it in the future. They'll mention what they're most interested in. Everyone cares about the NHS because it's something which is really personal to all of us, but it's something we own together, and it's a kind of collective responsibility for the NHS. And the crucial thing I want to achieve in my time as Health Secretary is to modernise the NHS, because we've got masses of investment as a result of decisions the Chancellor's taken and that I was involved with when I was at the Treasury before taking on this role. We've begun the work of modernising and reforming the NHS, but making sure that modernisation happens effectively, quickly, and makes the NHS fit for the future is what really drives me.
And I guess part of that is what you're announcing today. So this is the kind of patient records, which I guess sounds quite boring, but actually could be quite important.
Yeah, I mean, it's not boring at all. If I can just explain very briefly what it means. So at the moment, all of our individual data is very fragmented across the systems. You know, I know this. When I go to see the doctor for the condition that I have, you've got different trusts, you've got the GP, you've got different places you get blood tests. It's all on different systems. What this will mean is that it's all drawn together so it can be accessed in one place. So rather than the information being fragmented, it'll be drawn together. So that means when doctors, when clinicians are looking at your information, they can take better decisions more safely, more quickly. You don't have to repeat your story to lots of different people, and you can be in control. You can see it on the NHS app. So it's a real modernisation of the service for the future.
You'd mentioned there a condition that you have.
Yeah. So I've got a neurological condition. It's called myasthenia gravis. I can spell that if people are interested. It was diagnosed about 18 years ago, and I get treatment at the moment, fantastic treatment from my consultant and his team, and from different parts of the NHS. But what I take from that is that, you know, keeping on top of what different parts of the NHS are doing to support you takes my time, my doctor's time, and you have to keep on it to make sure it's all joined up. Now, I can do that. My doctor does it for me, and we do a fantastic, he does a fantastic job. But what about if people are coming into an A&E department? What about if you've got someone who's vulnerable and doesn't know what medications they're on? You know, what about if you've got someone who needs to access maternity services? Just one very quick example, Sophie, on this, because midwives at the moment can't access all of the records for pregnant women who they meet. And we know some of the really serious, horrific issues in maternity services. That means that either the midwife has to ask a woman to repeat all of the data back to all of the information, all of the history back to them, or they have to spend ages tracing this information through the system. Either way, they're not spending that time looking after that woman, and that's what we want them to be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, the maternity service is a great example of that as well, because often you get care at different hospitals as well, and being joined up is a very clear thing that could improve things. I did want to talk to you about maternity, if I may, because we've done a lot of it on Sky News. The number of women dying in childbirth is going up. I find this statistic absolutely staggering. I kind of feel like it's one of those things that I don't really understand why we're not shouting about it every single day. And women that I've spoken to feel like they're on a bit of a merry-go-round. They feel that there's been lots of different health secretaries, lots of different reviews, and, you know, nothing's actually really been done, nothing's changing. Can you commit to prioritising this as health secretary, like, now?
Yeah, I absolutely can. And I chaired the task force that we've got set up in government to oversee the work to improve maternity services in my first few days in the role. And the most powerful part of that for me, the bit that really stuck with me from those first few days in the role, was meeting some of the families who had lost their baby, mothers, fathers, the families there. And that really hit me. You know, in this job, you can sit and look at papers, you can look at budgets. Meeting someone who's been through that situation is horrific. And you know what Wes did before me in terms of prioritising maternity services was really important. And I'm not losing a second in picking that up and making sure it has the same commitment that it had under him. And for me, if I just say one final point, there's been lots of different reviews, there's been lots of different recommendations. What we want to do through this task force I'm chairing is drawing that together and actually having a plan to improve things.
Because I guess, and I absolutely hear what you're saying. I can feel, you know, how much speaking to those families affected you. There has been a bit of scepticism, wringing of hands at the fact that we've got another health secretary. You know, the Royal College of Midwives says a change of health secretary at this moment is the last thing women, babies and midwives need. I just want to play you Dr. Kim Thomas of the Birth Trauma Association. I spoke to her just after your appointment. This is what she told us.
I hope he does a good job, but we've never seen any signs that he's shown any interest in maternity before, so he's got quite a steep learning curve apart from anything else. It seems like an odd appointment, really, when there are MPs in Parliament who are clinicians, you know, so doctors and nurses who've got some kind of background in maternity.
But what would you say to Dr. Kim?
I would say to Dr. Kim and to anyone else who cares as deeply as she clearly does about maternity services, that this will be a priority for me. This is a priority for me. In my first few days, I made sure to meet families affected by baby loss, to make sure I'm chairing the task force, that we're bringing everyone together to make this change happen. And you know, when it comes to maternity services or the NHS more broadly, we all care about it. You know, we all really care about it. We all care about making sure the NHS works better for the future. It's a big project of focused delivery, of making sure that the right resources are being spent in the right way, that we're getting good value for money, that patients are getting the treatment they need earlier and safer and better, which is partly about the bill that I talked about today, the single patient record, and making sure more money is spent on the front line. But this is a cause that the NHS couldn't be more personal to me, as it is to all of us.
Yeah. Your appointment was welcomed almost immediately by the resident doctors calling another strike in June. What's your message to them? Have you met with them yet?
Yeah, I met with them last week, and they called the strike shortly after.
So
and it was really disappointing. I was really disappointed, to be honest, because if you look at the offer that was on the table, the pay increase is substantial. They've had a 28.9% pay increase over the last 3 years. On the table was another 4.9% on average, over 7% for some of the lowest paid. You know, that's a really strong pay settlement which was on offer. Now, what I said to the Resident Doctors Committee is that, look, we can't move any further on pay. I know that from my Treasury background that we cannot move any further on pay. We've already gone a long way in terms of pay. In terms of other aspects of the deal on the table, whether that's job progression, training opportunities and so on, we can talk about that, like how can we strengthen the offer to make it better for their members. And it's just incredibly disappointing that they've rushed to these unnecessary strikes rather than try and get the best possible deal for their members by engaging with us about the elements of the deal that we can strengthen.
Just finally, we're expecting over 1,000 pages of the kind of Mandelson files to be released later today. What would you say to people who are like, hang on a minute, you know, there should be more transparency here, there's too much being redacted?
Well, I think the level of transparency is going to be unprecedented. The volume of information that's going to be put out is unprecedented. It's right we do that. You know, we've been very clear that the appointment of Mandelson was wrong. Parliament then decided that this information would be made public. The government is fully complying with that, and it's important that we honour that commitment to transparency.
OK, James Murray, thank you
very much.
James Murray, there, new Health Secretary. And as part of our really wide-ranging maternity coverage, we've got a special programme here on Sky News this week. Sarah Jane Mee will spend 2 days in Coventry Hospital and also present the UK Tonight live from there on Wednesday, speaking to families, expectant mums, midwives, other NHS staff too, and hear firsthand what it's like to give birth in this country. So that's Wednesday, 8 p.m. Don't miss it. Coming up, we're talking about disposable vapes, hearing from a campaigner a year on from the ban.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Now, it's been a year since a ban on disposable vapes came into force. Let's find out how that's going.
Scott Butler is from the e-waste campaign group Material Focus and joins us now. So has it worked?
It was a big step, it was a big call, but I think we were sceptical at the time. What we've seen is that new models became available before the ban kicked in that looked pretty much exactly the same, tasted the same, were priced the same, named the same. And what we've seen is that whilst at the peak we were having about 8 million a week that were being binned or littered, that's dropped to 6 million a week, which is on the surface a good thing. It's a different mix as well, so you've got vapes and vape pods now, so you've got more rechargeable items on the market. But the reality is that too many vapes are still being binned or incorrectly recycled. They're going into waste lorries, they're going to waste and recycling centres. They're a major cause of fires and the disruption and risk and safety associated with that. And also they still stand alone as being a waste of valuable resources. There's lithium, there's copper, there's cobalt, there's nickel. All those things that we need for a smart and green tech future are being used in this item that's being told to the public that they can just throw it away. It's disposable, and it never was.
And so the disposable ban was aimed at that, the green impact, as opposed to trying to get fewer people to be vaping.
Yeah, predominantly. I think it was just recognised that it was crazy. It's got a lithium-ion battery in it, which could be recharged. That's wonderful technology, but it's technology with a temper when something goes wrong with it. And what we're seeing with these increases in waste fires is they get crushed, they get damaged, and it's causing this knock-on impact. But primarily it was an environmental rationale. These new models, as I said, are available at a similar price. So in the end, it's not really affecting access to vapes. It was really about the environmental waste and associated risks.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, when it first came in and then you kind of look at the change, I was quite cynical about whether this would actually lead to change in behaviour, because you have, like you say, you've seen a lot of these vapes where they're now rechargeable, but all they seem to have done is put a little plug at the bottom and they're exactly the same price as a disposable one. So what's to stop people just chucking it in the bin?
There's a lot of people who will not realise that the ban ever kicked in. So, OK, there's a big hoo-ha and we're talking about it across media, but in reality, most people are leading busy lives. What's happened with vaping is that because they were called disposable in the first place, which is what we're asking people to ditch, is stop using that word, because at the very point of purchase, you're sending this message to people that this is not really worth very much. So it's just that changing behaviour will take an awful lot of time. It's always been legally obligated for those who sell vapes to take them back. It should be as easy to recycle a vape as it should be to buy one. And you can buy a vape pretty much anywhere at the moment. Hopefully that will start to be restricted soon. But that's not happened. So those who are profiting from selling vapes, which is, the shops, convenience stores, supermarkets, are sort of making false profits and we should always beware of false profits, because they're not covering the costs of recycling them. And that's not a new law. That was ingrained and it's been there for 4 or 5 years. But if you go to a shop that sells vapes, only half of them are actually offering any take-back, and they're certainly not promoting that the way that they're promoting the selling of them.
Where are we in terms of overall vape usage? Because, it was banning on certain flavours and packaging as well to try and stop young people from having them. Have we seen it peak and come down or not?
I think it's about levelled off. It's not an area that we particularly focus on, but there are new rules coming. There's a tobacco and vaping bill that can look at marketing, it can look at flavours, it can look at packaging, it looks at licensing. At the moment, barber shops and random places can sell vapes. So there needs to be a licensing system that's put in place, which includes, requirements for take-back, so that can be enforced properly. But, vaping is definitely here to stay. There's health advocates for it. There are others who argue against that. What we are urging is that people should just, if they do vape, then use rechargeable models, reusable models, never bin them, always put them in a safe specialist container, and then they'll get recycled.
Do you think the government's been a bit slow on this, on the kind of regulation side of it? Because there's been this huge explosion very, very quickly, right? It feels like the regulation's only just catching up.
Yeah, it came out of nowhere. So vapes, for us, we work on all electrical, so anything with a plug, battery and cable. And a vape is like the notorious poster child of something that we call fast tech, which is this cheap, not so cheerful tat, for want of a better word, that is inundating everywhere. If in doubt, put a battery in it and an LED light on it. Seems to be the thing with any product. So it's difficult to keep ahead of that because there is no Illuminati that sits there and says this product should be allowed onto the market. They just come. And disposable vapes definitely came out of nowhere. And we were talking about this 3-4 years ago. And we're not particularly an advocate for a ban because sort of where do you start, where do you end? But I remember saying in meetings at the time, it was like, look, if you're going to do this, do it quickly. Because what happened is, in the time that we were talking about this, these new models that look the same, taste the same, price the same, name the same, hit the market. So it's a wonderfully innovative industry if you can sort of, you know, lose the knock-on unintended consequences of it.
Scott Butler, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now let's turn to the war in Sudan next, where aid groups say the war's created the world's largest and most severe humanitarian crisis. We're joined now by Dame Annalise Dodds, Labour MP and chair of the all-party parliamentary group for Sudan and South Sudan. A very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. You're just back from a trip, I believe. How bad is the situation there?
Yes, I visited Chad, which is one of the neighbouring countries that has been accepting refugees from Sudan. So 13 million people have been displaced from their homes in Sudan. That's a population, obviously, the size of London, being forced to flee their home in order to get to safety because of the ferocity of this war on civilians. I visited a place called Adre, which had about 40,000 people living there before the war. Now there are 240,000 people living there. Enormous numbers of refugees, vast majority of them women and children. It's a really desperate situation.
Is there more we could be doing that would make a meaningful difference?
Well, unfortunately, we really don't see the crisis in Sudan being prioritised at the top of the international agenda. And that's quite astonishing given the scale of the crisis. As I said, 13 million people displaced, 20 million people living with food insecurity, not sure where their next meal, perhaps tomorrow or the day after or the week after, is going to come from. Huge numbers of severely malnourished children. So this is a giant crisis, but we're just not seeing it at the top of the international agenda. Yvette Cooper, as the Foreign Secretary, has been trying to raise this, and that was reflected in what we heard when we were in Chad. But we really need this to be resolved because civilians are paying the price, both in terms of that humanitarian impact, the hunger, the displacement, but also because of the ferocity and brutality of this terrible war.
I wanted to touch a little bit as well on the situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo and link the two. Maybe there's not a link, but the extent to which you're seeing with the Ebola outbreak, with the situation in Sudan, the consequences of cuts in the aid budget, not really just the UK cuts, but which I know you obviously were very much against, but we've seen it across a lot of the G7, particularly the US.
Well, we have seen the impact of those cuts. And actually, when I was in Chad, a number of refugees said that they were incredibly grateful for the support that they had received from, for example, the UN, from different countries. The UK's role in Sudan and trying to support refugees was acknowledged. But they also said that they were aware that support had reduced, particularly with the cuts to US support. I think ultimately what we're seeing is less engagement from the international community, yes, in relation to aid, but also in relation to resolving conflict as well. Of course, the Ebola situation in DRC is that much worse because that country has been subject to such a brutal conflict, because it's very, very difficult to get to people, for people to feel safe accessing facilities because of that conflict. And again, in Sudan, we see such a ferocious conflicts, and we just don't see countries stepping up to the plate to resolve this. We need, in particular, the United States and the Gulf countries to be really working far harder to get this terrible conflict resolved.
Excuse me. I wanted to ask about Labour leadership at the moment, and is it your expectation that there will be a leadership contest either way, or only if Andy Burnham wins the Makerfield by-election?
Well, I wouldn't want to be precipitate and get ahead of ourselves. Of course, Labour's got to win that by-election. I've been in Makerfield. I have to say that there's a huge amount of support for Andy Burnham out on the doors. He's got a very strong local reputation, but the decision is ultimately going to be for the people of Makerfield to decide, and then we will need to see what transpires in the future. I've always been clear. What I want to see is change, and that's what certainly my constituents in Oxford East were saying to me when I was out on the doorstep in the run-up to the local elections. They wanted to see change. They supported their local Labour representation, but they wanted to see particularly action on the cost of living crisis and action for fairness happening far more quickly. So that's what I'm going to keep pushing for.
Is the manifesto still binding, though?
Well, Labour won a significant majority on the basis of the manifesto that we put forward to the public. And there's a lot in that we've been trying to enact, everything from much stronger working rights to action to get NHS waiting lists down to more bobbies on the beat. So that manifesto, in terms of its implementation, is progressing. I think it's really important that we try and get the job finished, that we actually put those measures in place that are going to make a big difference to people's lives, because that's what they want to see from politicians. They don't want to see tittle-tattle. They don't want to see internal conversations. They want to see us getting on with improving their situation, which is quite hard for a lot of people at the moment because of that cost of living crisis.
I guess just finally, if Andy Burnham wins this by-election, would you call loud and clear for the Prime Minister to step aside?
I think Andy is someone who's got a very strong reputation because of what he's been able to deliver in Greater Manchester, indeed what he's still delivering. I think that the Labour Party does need to have that internal conversation about our direction for the future. But as I said, the key thing for me isn't about which politician's up or down. It's actually about whether we're achieving that change, delivering that change on the ground. That's what's really important to me.
Annalise Dodds, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
On the issue of the Makerfield by-election, there are 14 candidates in all. You can see them on your screen now, page 1, now page 2. There are all of the candidates for the by-election on the 18th of June. Let's have a look at the weather now.
The stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
It'll be cooler and more unsettled this week with widespread showers for longer spells of rain. Britain will see locally heavy rain spreading east across many parts this morning, but southern and eastern England and the north look mainly dry. Elsewhere, eastern parts of Ireland and Northern Ireland will be wet, while the west will largely dry up, expect near average temperatures, tempered by a stiff breeze. England will see prolonged rain spreading to most parts later, while Scotland will see rain giving way to more scattered, locally heavy showers.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Jackie's here. We've got the sport coming up, which we're happy about.
Yeah. It's sort of like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're an Arsenal fan. If you're not, you're actually delighted. There's so much hate online for Arsenal. But the parade still went ahead, and it was still attended by, the estimate is, up to 1 million people yesterday in North London through the streets of Islington, and we'll be getting a few nice pictures from that, hearing from a couple of the players on the bus, and also changing tack, the French Open yesterday, the rise of a couple of really brilliant teenagers. So we'll be looking at that too.
The Data and Forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
With respect, Minister, answer the question. It's you.
Hello and welcome, I'm Cathy Newman. So could the outcome of these elections be manipulated? New me, new show, new furniture. Hard news needs a hard chair. I feel like I'm in therapy. Oh, there's room for two on this one. Do you think people will take me seriously with my feet up?
Sorry, madam, but we're closing now.
Oh, sorry. Sofa sorted, let's get this show on the road.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
I mean, what a weekend for Arsenal. What a roller coaster. I mean, the kind of heartbreak on Saturday, but then it was joyful, wasn't it? I mean, seeing the number of people out yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be quite hard if you were an Arsenal player to go from the low of the Champions League final and losing it in the manner that you did, to then go, oh, I've got to get on a bus now and get a wave and slap a smile on my face and, pretend everything's OK. And I suppose when you got on the bus and looked out on this and saw about 1 million people is the estimate of who turned out yesterday for the parade, and saw all that and saw the love of the players over what they did for an entire season. It would cheer you up a little bit. I mean, even
definitely.
Wilfred be cheered up by that.
I think massively, and I think it was great because it would force, particularly Eze and Gabrielle, to pick themselves up off the floor immediately.
Face the fans.
Yeah, and by the way, on that note, I haven't seen any negative sort of, oh, you missed a penalty type feedback. It has shown how net positive a season this was for Arsenal, despite, as it happens, the parade being the day after the Champions League final loss. But just how grateful all of the fans are to this squad. And I think it comes down to one key thing. Sometimes you lose a match and it's because you've got players who are overpaid and not putting in the hard yards. This team left it all out there. And the fans all see that. We didn't get over the line, but it's not through lack of effort or lack of commitment.
Actually key to the whole season, David Raya, an absolutely immense part of the fact that they were so hard to score against, and immense part of them being able to lift that trophy. And it was so close to being 2 trophies. Yeah. I mean, one penalty kick away, potentially.
Mm-hmm. The other thing as well is watching that the final as a neutral and watching the penalties. One of my main concerns was how the England players did as an England fan, but neutral in the game. And actually seeing the kind of pick-me up that people like Eze must have got, right, from yesterday. Definitely. After the heartbreak of missing. It's got to be a good thing.
I don't know, actually. I think if you make a mistake like that and you feel like you're responsible for a big defeat in a final, I think that takes quite a long time to get over because you are a little bit scarred from it. And Gabriel, I mean, he doesn't normally take penalties, so maybe that's not going to be a position he's going to have to be in for Brazil this summer. But people had to be rescued during that parade from up lampposts and high places.
Was Wilfred.
About 75.
I don't need to climb a lamppost.
No, he doesn't need to climb a lamppost. About 75
Nor
people.
I try.
No shit. 75 people had to be rescued, and there were a few arrests, but things like drunken disorderly and drugs, and there were, a handful of arrests. I mean, you would expect that in crowds.
Not as many as the rest of Paris.
But it takes me on to those pictures from Paris. So there was a parade, obviously, for the Paris Saint-Germain players, parading the Champions League trophy. Someone's dropped it. They went through and had a big reception, President Macron at the Élysée Palace. But the night that they won, these were the scenes.
They won.
Paris, and across the country, 780 people were arrested. Public disorder, smashing into shops,
Bizarre.
Loads of police were injured, and they had to prepare for it because last year it was even worse. 20,000 police had to be prepared just in case they won.
So
ridiculous.
Last season we lost them in the semi-final. I went to the second leg in Paris, which obviously PSG won. And I remember going home with my brother. Obviously, he was zipped up, no sign of the Arsenal shirt. We'd all been worn beforehand. They were burning cars out. I was thinking to myself,
why?
What on earth is going on? Because Macron announced a new sort of pension reform or something overnight that I'd missed. I mean, it's bizarre.
Imagine if they'd lost.
Imagine if they'd lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine if they'd lost. Anyway, so parades, both sides of the channel, and very, very different vibes, I think. Also in France last night, I don't know if you're aware of the French Open, if you've been watching it, but most people thought, well, Alcaraz is not in it, and then Jannik Sinner got knocked out, so it's all a bit open, and I don't know whether some people kind of lost interest. But they definitely shouldn't, because there are two 19-year-olds that have burst onto the scene and really sort of come of age this week and are now into the second week. João Fonseca, a Brazilian, 19 years old, he's got a massive forehand, and he is going to be an absolute superstar in tennis. There is no question. They've been talking about him for a couple of years. The other guy is Rafa Hodar from Madrid, 19 years old, who went to Virginia University, where his dad is the tennis coach, for a year, and then thought, you know what, I can make it pro. And he's in his second Grand Slam, only his second Grand Slam. And both of them had amazing wins yesterday. Could have a quick look, actually, at the action from that. So Fonseca, here he is, 19, defeating the two-time French Open finalist Casper Ruud, having already put Novak Djokovic out, by the way, to book his place in the quarterfinals of the men's draw. 7-5, 7-6, 5-7, 6-2, and he will now play 20-year-old Jakub Mensik for a place in the semis. Let's have a look at Hodar, Rafa Hodar, recovering from 2 sets down to beat fellow countryman Pablo Carreño Busta to reach the quarterfinals in just his second appearance at a Grand Slam, where he will now play the favourite, Alex Zverev. So, 2 to watch out for. 19. I mean, they're little babies.
The first one looked 12, but baby face.
It does look very young.
Either way, can I just go back to football quickly? It's 10 days until the World Cup starts.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, that's
unbelievable.
actually crept up really quickly.
It really has.
Speaking of the World Cup, last night there were some new rules announced. So the International Football Association Board announced the rule changes for the World Cup, which affects VAR. And for people who hate VAR, well, bad luck. They've been given even more powers at this World Cup. So things like there is going to be a 5-second countdown, like a shot clock, for throw-ins and goal kicks. There is going to be a 10-second...
Oh, I like a 5-second countdown.
Do you? So you can't time
Can't waste time. That's good. I hadn't seen that.
10-second substitution rule. So you do it quickly. Get your subs on.
Oh, I like this.
Quickly. OK. Red cards. This is quite a big one. Red cards for players covering their mouths during angry confrontations. If it's just a sort of general, chit-chat on the field, fine. But angry confrontations, what are you saying that you need to hide what you're saying?
I quite like that too, so they can be lip read. But I don't quite see how you could punish someone by a lip reading.
Well, you can't. Well, that's why they do that. So
I know, but it'd be pretty hard to get punished for what we think you say.
This is quite a good one, actually. More VAR powers to overturn wrongly awarded second yellow cards. So a second yellow, VAR can step in and go, actually, look at that.
That's what I don't like. Just the over VAR. Let the official on the pitch make the decision. Particularly for a World Cup where it's an emotional game. Football. It's you want to be able to celebrate. You want to be able to, throw something at the screen if you do. You want that gut reaction.
I know people are not robots as well, which is
cutting time wasting. This is great.
Well, yeah.
If they enforce it.
And also grappling as well. I mean, a lot of these things would have affected Arsenal this season had they been applied, but it is now for the World Cup. Some really obvious ones to me: punishments for teams who walk off during a match in protest. Well, to me that's obvious. If you walk off or tell your team to walk off, that's it. It's all over. You've lost.
They're just getting ahead of a repeat of what happened in the African Cup of Nations.
Yeah, they are. So that will be interesting to see how quickly and how well they implement those new rule changes. And we should quickly mention as well about the Women's FA Cup won by Manchester City, who've had an extraordinary season. I mean, they need an open-top bus parade, doing the double, beating Brighton 4-0 yesterday. And I wanted to sort of maybe have a little quick sort of touch on Areola, but those talks have not yet opened, it seems. So Andoni Areola nailed on pretty much, although the talks have not even started yet, to be the new Liverpool manager. And listening to phone-ins and fans' forums, it seems that Liverpool fans are really happy about that. They like the way Bournemouth play football. It's gung-ho, it's more heavy metal, as Jurgen Klopp would like to say, and they think that he will play the sort of football that they can get behind.
Yeah, he's been brilliant, hasn't he? So, yeah.
I have to say, dwelling with the World Cup coming, I was thinking yesterday, the more positive outlook is it was a bit greedy to want to win the Premier League, the Champions League and the World Cup all in one season. So I'll take 2 of 3.
My favourite, just to kind of try and, negate some of the Arsenal fandom that you might be suffering through on the programme.
Well, I'm just turning it on to the World Cup.
But also only talking about it because it actually happened. I mean, if Chelsea were in that final, we'd be talking the same thing, but put the word Chelsea in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's very fair.
But all the home nations in the World Cup, it's going to be very exciting. 10 days.
Well, quite a bit longer for England.
Yes.
Thomas Tuchel has allegedly told his team, if you're taking a holiday, and obviously there's Arsenal players in the team need to take a holiday, take it in the States.
Yeah.
Make that part of your acclimatisation.
Yeah, fair enough.
Fair enough.
Jackie, great stuff. Thank you.
Lots more coming up. Stay with us. We'll be discussing, of course, the build-up to the latest release of the Mandelson files. That's coming up.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Good morning. It is 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Bridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well.
Mandelson files thousands of pages to be released today, exposing more details over his appointment as US ambassador.
13-year-old girl dies after being pulled from a river, bringing the total number of deaths linked to the heatwave up to 17.
Cuba's crumbling health system. Sky News goes undercover inside the hospitals that were once celebrated as the model for developing nations.
Also today, we hear from the women who say they've been left with life-altering conditions after using the contraceptive injection Depo-Provera.
Plus, a party 22 years in the making. We'll bring you all the scenes and the celebrations as more than 500,000 Arsenal fans descend on North London to celebrate their Premier League success.
A very good morning. We're getting the second drop of the Mandelson files today. Hundreds of text messages, emails and WhatsApp messages, which means another bruising day ahead for the Prime Minister and his government.
So the decision to appoint Peter Mandelson to the role of US ambassador has haunted Keir Starmer's premiership and also sparked fury among Labour MPs. He was sacked last September, just 7 months into the job, over his relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, and then, of course, arrested in February on suspicion of misconduct in public office. We should say he has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. So let's have a look at what we're expecting to see today. Whoop, if I just get out from under the desk, a little bit tight, that one. Let's have a look. We're expecting 1,000 pages of files. We only got 147 last time. Remember just how explosive they were. So this is a big load of information that we're getting today. It's going to include text with government ministers, potentially some leadership candidates, and also Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff, who lost his job over the whole Mandelson saga as well. But not everything is going to be in it. So we're not expecting to see the security vetting summary after the Met Police asked the government to withhold the document. And I guess this is the whole dance the government is trying to do. Release as much information as possible to show that they're being transparent, but also not jeopardise any live investigation. There has been a row, I think it's fair to say, about the amount of information that's been redacted.
Lucy's here to discuss it in a bit more detail with us. Why don't we start on that topic, Lucy, this time round, and the extent to which we expect there to be a bit of a kind of pushback after the release that it's not enough?
Yeah, I think that's where this kind of moves on to today, if you like. So previously, and I'm sure we will continue to talk about what this means for Keir Starmer's judgment, what it says about him, his decision-making, etc. However, I think what will be the challenge for Number 10 is that they want this to be a kind of get it all out, more than 1,000 pages. I think it's almost a record for the number of documents that have been presented to MPs in the Commons. But there will be real questions and pressure on the government around what has been redacted. A number of things for national security reasons, international relations. But say you have kind of WhatsApps about Donald Trump. Have they been redacted? The other thing I want to point out, and that one of the frustrations from the Intelligence and Security Committee, so one of the committees of MPs that have been kind of looking over this process, has been that so much of government communications is done on WhatsApp. How many times have we heard of that, whatever kind of scandal or government decision-making process carried out on WhatsApp? And how many people do you message now, maybe in Number 10 or MPs who have disappearing messages on WhatsApp? I've noticed an increasing number, actually, are switching to that method. Those messages can't be saved. They're not saved, so they won't be in this dump of documents. And so I think the problem for Number 10 is that there's the confidence in this process has been undermined. And so Darren Jones today, when he's answering questions about them, will probably be about what isn't in there. Obviously, that security vetting document, but what else is missing? And again, sorry, it comes back to that point about Keir Starmer saying that he'd come into Number 10 and clean up politics. And there's kind of this feeling of murkiness. What are we not being told?
I mean, that said, just stepping back from it, if your issue with this appointment and its fallout was the Chief of Staff, he's gone. If your issue is Peter Mandelson himself, he's been arrested and is facing a police investigation. If your issue is the Prime Minister, it's hard to think of him being under more pressure than he currently is. So we've kind of got there. And if the pushback is genuinely national security and not burning bridges with President Trump, it's kind of legitimate. It's not like it's being used as cover to protect a strong Prime Minister. Do you know what I mean?
And there is a contrast with the States, I think, as well, right?
Well, massively on this issue.
Honest.
Yeah. The other one, I mean, it's really interesting on the disappearing WhatsApp messages is obviously a massive problem going forward. There's other messaging services. You also have to balance that with wanting quick and efficient decision-making and empowering the use of technology. That does mean you don't all have to wait till you gather on a minuted meeting on a Wednesday afternoon and can get on with things. So it's a really difficult one. I'm not sure what the solution is, but it's a tough one for sure.
Yeah. Do we know when we're expecting it?
We will later this afternoon, so about 3:30 p.m. And as usual, Darren Jones will stand up, and say the humble address. That's what the parliamentary procedure has been called. That has kind of forced this information to be released. He will come out and say that as much as we can publish is now out there. The questions from the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats will be, what haven't we seen? And that's where this rumbles on.
Great stuff.
Thank you.
A 13-year-old girl has become the latest person to die in UK waters in just over a week. In total, 17 people have died in just 8 days.
It's just unspeakably tragic. Olivia Guthrie is here with us. So what do we know about this 13-year-old?
Well, I mean, as you say, a completely unspeakably tragic thing that has happened to her family over the weekend. It happened last night in North Yorkshire. She was in the River Wharfe when she got into difficulties. Now, emergency services did manage to get her out of the water and take her by air ambulance, but she sadly died when she reached hospital. Now, this is the latest tragedy in amongst this heat wave that we've been having that has obviously, understandably, seen a lot of people getting into the water, but that has now seen that we have had 17 deaths related to the water. It follows on the death of a woman in her 60s in Lancashire and a man also in his 60s who also is now in a critical condition in hospital after they tried to rescue their dog on Russell Beach. Now, emergency services say that the dog was found safe and well, but this couple got themselves into difficulty in the sea. It also follows this morning we now have South Yorkshire Police continuing to search for this 11-year-old boy who went missing in South Yorkshire. He went into the River Don. He was seen by members of the public going into the water in Mexborough, but he was not seen getting out. It's not clear what's happened, but the police say that multiple agencies are still looking for him. They've urged members of the public not to get involved in that search because they do have it under control, they say, but they have no results as a result of it so far. They say that specialist officers are looking after that little boy's family this morning. Now, forecasters say that the temperatures are going to drop this week and we've got some rain coming, and I suppose the positive thing about that is that it will hopefully bring an end to this awful spate of deaths that we've seen in the water. 17 people now who've died as a result of it.
Olivia, thanks so much. To the Middle East next, and airstrikes have resumed between the US and Iran over the weekend as each side claimed to have hit military targets near the Strait of Hormuz. We've also seen reports of air defences in Kuwait intercepting missile and drone attacks where a major US base is located.
So the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio in the last 48 hours has spoken with the leaders of Lebanon and Israel after what you're looking at on your screens right now happened. So this is RDF forces making their deepest incursion into Lebanon in 26 years. They seized the castle that you can see on your screens there, despite, of course, the presumably or the reportedly ongoing ceasefire.
Well, a US proposal would reportedly see Hezbollah halt all attacks on Israel and Israel refrain from escalating operations in Beirut.
I'm going to speak now to our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons. Adam, just update us on the latest. What's happening in Lebanon?
So we've had this tit-for-tat exchange between US forces and the Iranians. It seems like the US attacked a drone and then Iran responded by attacking a US air base. They didn't say where it was, but Kuwaiti air defences were activated. Both sides are still talking about some sort of deal. Both sides are saying that they're not happy with it. So remember, we've had a ceasefire in place since April the 8th, and you've heard so many times from Washington and from President Trump saying that a deal is near, but that it hasn't happened. So these talks continue. But this is a very, very uneasy piece at the moment. And you keep going through these sort of milestones. I think there's a lot of people now think that the United States is sort of hamstrung by the fact that it's going to be hosting the World Cup shortly, and that it doesn't really want to have a military conflict during the World Cup, particularly when it's one of the hosties and Iran is one of the competing nations. So these timeframes about when a military conflict could resume again, if it did, are pretty tight. Separately, the Israeli military are pushing forward rapidly into Lebanon. It's not so long ago that they were effectively using a demarcation line of the Litani River and keeping south of that. Well, that is now history because they pushed well beyond the Litani. There's another river just beyond that, about 10 kilometers further north, and they're now saying that that is a demarcation line, that everything below that is to be considered a combat zone. And within that is this castle. That is an old Crusader castle. So we're talking the best part of 1,000 years old, called Beaufort Castle, known by the French. And the Israeli military have now taken that again. Now, this is at the top of a cliff that's over 2,000 feet high, has this commanding view over southern Lebanon, so very strategically important, but also symbolically important. It was 44 years to the day that the Israeli military returned to take it this time. They'd taken it in 1982 and then stayed there for 18 years, building fortifications, using that as a stronghold in the first Lebanese war. When they left, they blew up a lot of those strongholds. Now they're back again. And I think that is an indication that Israel is now continuing to go further on. The towns around that area, I think, are going to come under attack again. There's a further warning from the Israelis today to Lebanese residents to evacuate. Their rationale is that they are going after Hezbollah infrastructure, that the north of Israel is coming under sustained attack from drones and rockets. That is clearly true. Another Israeli soldier has been killed, or his death has been announced today. So the tension on that front is high. There have been calls, including just now from Emmanuel Macron, the French president, for de-escalation, including, I see from some British diplomats as well, saying that there has to be a reduction in this military activity to allow diplomacy to play its part. But the smoke signals coming from the Israeli government are that they believe that they should push ever further into Lebanon. And I think partly so that if a US-Iranian ceasefire does come into effect, if the fighting is halted in Lebanon, that the facts on the ground will be that they occupy a lot of it.
Adam, whilst we've got you, what is your latest interpretation on the US-Iranian ceasefire talks, which, you know, every week the sort of positivity of the rhetoric gets greater, but then over the weekend some kind of military exchanges kind of derail that a little bit?
I think a lot of the positive rhetoric is coming out of Washington, and I think it's sounding from this region ever more of a sort of triumph of hope over reality. The problem is that very often this rhetoric is yes, but. It's yes, we've come up for a deal that could open the Strait of Hormuz, but we haven't come up for a deal about enriched uranium or ballistic missiles. And you go back to the start of this war, the Strait of Hormuz was open. Shipping was going through it. The sheer fact of reopening the Strait of Hormuz is hardly a victory. So I think the problem has always been about the prospect of nuclear weapons. I think the idea that you open the Strait of Hormuz and then you introduce a 60-day period to negotiate around nuclear weapons, I mean, that for sure is not going to satisfy the Israeli government here. It's an oft-used expression, but clearly Donald Trump is looking for an off-ramp, a way to end this conflict and get away from it and kick those talks into the long grass. But the Iranians know that they can play a long game here, that they can keep drawing concessions. They're talking about billions and billions of dollars worth of assets being unfrozen. They're saying they're not going to hand over enriched uranium. They say they're going to charge a toll to shipping that goes through the Strait of Hormuz. And if you take that at face value, it feels like we are still a considerable distance from any kind of substantial workable deal. But this is all about rhetoric. Behind the scenes, the reality will be different. But certainly, if you put together what the Iranians are saying and what the Americans are saying, there is a huge gulf between the two of them.
Adam, thanks so much.
We're talking next about the contraceptive jab Depo-Provera. It's something that you kind of take every 3 months or so. A group of women have told Sky News they've been left with brain tumours, blindness and other life-altering conditions as a result of using this jab.
They're now suing Pfizer over the alleged long-term effects of the drug. Sky's Conor Gillis has been speaking with them.
And were you given any warnings? What were you told about the risks involved here?
Nothing really, I can't remember.
Certainly not brain tumours.
Definitely not brain tumours, no, because I wouldn't have stayed on it.
For 20 years, Kirsty used the Depo contraceptive jab. She was told it was safe. Now her life is lived through a blur.
Basically can't see out of the right eye. Like I say, it disfigured my face. So it was confidence, it affected my mental health, because a lot of people ask questions like, what's wrong with your eye? And I know they're just curious, but it totally destroyed me. They're saying that within the next 15 to 20 years, I might lose the sight in my left eye, which is my good eye, because of it overcompensating for the right eye.
Millions use these injections worldwide. Recent studies suggest long-term use carries a higher risk of these tumours. They aren't usually cancerous, but can cause blindness, seizures and memory loss. Tammy used the same Pfizer-made jab for 15 years. She was diagnosed with 4 brain tumours after her symptoms were initially dismissed.
I was told I had dry eye and to just leave, go home, you're not getting a scan. That was on the Thursday. On the Saturday morning, I woke up and my right eye was bulged out.
Were you given warnings that this could be a possibility of brain tumours?
Never. The French did a study and managed to link, meningiomas to the use of oestrogen, so Pfizer's Depo. Then, yeah, they gave that information to the UK in 2024. The government needs to take hold of this. The NHS need to be because the problem we have is people saying it's a very small chance. OK, that is true, but consistent use of this drug for more than a year increases that chance of meningiomas.
Kirsty was told her condition was just one of those things, but with her permission, we've obtained medical records that suggest a possible link in black and white. Her doctors have written to her saying, please now stop the injections as they can promote the growth of meningioma or brain tumours. A legal fight, US-style class action is now underway here in Scotland, possibly worth hundreds of millions of pounds.
You can't put an atomic bomb equivalent of a medical device on the market and put a warning on it and think you can get away with that. It's just not that simple. The product wasn't safe, the warnings were not clear, and the women have suffered the most horrific injuries. They are entitled to compensation.
Pfizer say patient safety is their priority. For years, these women trusted a routine injection. Now they're left wondering how a simple choice became a life sentence. Conor Gillis, Sky News.
Well, in response to Conor's story, a spokesperson from Pfizer issued this statement to Sky News. We conduct rigorous and continuous monitoring of all our medicines, including assessments of reported adverse events, in collaboration with health authorities around the globe. Depo-Provera has been approved in more than 60 countries. People should talk to their doctor, pharmacist or nurse if they have any concerns or experience any side effects.
Well, over the last few months, Sky News has led a major investigation into what it's like giving birth in the UK today. We've heard from hundreds of mothers, fathers, midwives and doctors about maternity services struggling to cope and staff at breaking point.
Honestly, I think it's been perhaps the most affecting story that I've done as a journalist. We've been overwhelmed by people wanting to share their story. It is clearly, not okay, and we've just been trying to amplify their voices. So in continuation of that, in the last hour, when we had the first interview with the new Health Secretary, James Murray, we wanted to ask him about what he's going to do to prioritise maternity care. The number of women dying in childbirth is going up. I find this statistic absolutely staggering. I kind of feel like it's one of those things that I don't really understand why we're not shouting about it every single day. And women that I've spoken to feel like they're on a bit of a merry-go-round. They feel that there's been lots of different health secretaries, lots of different reviews, and, nothing's actually really been done, nothing's changing. Can you commit to prioritising this as Health Secretary, now?
Yeah, I absolutely can. And I chaired the task force that we've got set up in government to oversee the work to improve maternity services in my first few days in the role. And the most powerful part of that for me, the bit that really stuck with me from those first few days in the role, was meeting some of the families who had lost their baby, mothers, fathers, the families there. And that really hit me. In this job, you can sit and look at papers, you can look at budgets. Meeting someone who's been through that situation is horrific. And what Wes did before me in terms of prioritising maternity services was really important. And I'm not losing a second in picking that up and making sure it has the same commitment that it had under him.
A reminder, we'll have a special programme on the state of maternity care in the UK here on Sky News this week. Sarah J. Mee will spend 2 days in Coventry Hospital and will present the UK Tonight live from there on Wednesday, where she'll be talking to families, people expecting a baby, midwives, other staff, to hear about what it's like giving birth in this country. So that is on Wednesday at 8 p.m.
Let's go to another major global story this morning, and that is the Ebola outbreak. We're joined now by Dr. Ikwaro Abuku, former president of the Ugandan Medical Association. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. First, just give us an update, if you can, on the situation where you are in Uganda, but also across the border in the DRC. Are things getting worse at a worrying rate?
Well, as you know, thank you very much for having me this morning. There are two systems. There is the Uganda health system, which is resilient, more prepared. And there is the DRC system, which I cannot authoritatively speak for, but what we are seeing is that the situation has reached a point in DRC that Uganda has found it necessary to limit travel. Cross-border trade now is affected because the borders of Uganda have been closed by the government of Uganda, suggesting that the Uganda health system is protecting itself from the exponential rise of Ebola cases in the DRC. They have limited resources, obviously, in terms of the human capital, the health facilities, and also we saw that the community cooperation has not been the best. It could have been better, I think, because of the associated factors with the economic factors such as mining, such as war, the ongoing war, so that reduces community trust. Recall this is the 17th outbreak in the DRC, so they should have been the most experienced country to come or to stop or to mount a very effective response in the shortest time possible. So over 1,000 cases reported, over 200 deaths in the DRC. In Uganda, in the contrast, we've had typically the imported cases from DRC. I think we've had not more than 3 deaths. I recall 2, but it could have been a third, which I may have missed. The total number of confirmed cases is 10 and below. I recall 8 in the last report 2 days ago. But government has taken tough measures, such as closing travel. We have a 2-weekly flight from the DRC, which has been stopped. We have several borders. There's the porous border, 700, 800 kilometers, but there's a Mpondwe border, there's border in Aru, Ariwara, and so on in the West Nile. But those have been closed with limited movement of trade, I think, but travel is limited. However, Uganda is still open for tourism. As you know, 10 cases of Ebola do not mean much in Uganda. We have handled bigger problems and we've resolved them. But also putting it into perspective. In Uganda, our problem is really things like malaria. And when we concentrate so much on disease outbreaks, and I know it's happening in DRC now, it happened in West Africa, in the 2013-2016 outbreak, whereby the essential services are also constrained. Many more people died from malaria compared to Ebola in West Africa.
Just to come in, because I think just to come in, because I think it's so interesting. You're talking about the contrast with Uganda, which has a much better healthcare structure, and the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Is this a case of, the world, I guess, turning its back on the DRC, a country that is cripplingly poor, that has no healthcare system, and then they can't deal with these outbreaks?
No, not at all. We are seeing persistence of post-colonial structures, neo-colonialism, because DRC's economy is much bigger than the one of Uganda. DRC is one of the richest countries on the ground and has supplied the minerals to the rest of the world. The lithium batteries, the cobalt for our iPhones is powered by DRC. The first nuclear bomb was powered by DRC. So DRC has the resources, but the economic infrastructure of the world does not permit DRC to develop indigenously, organically, and become sovereign economically. So yes, the current system is what it is. It has a weaker health system than Uganda, which has been politically stable for the past 40 years with one president, obviously, democratic elections and so on, and the economy has grown steadily. However, in DRC, for instance, in DRC, their cities lack the infrastructure, the roads, the electricity, the basic utilities to support a very robust health system. And this is the challenge we are seeing, that a country can be resource-rich, but in terms of service delivery, we can have limitations. And when Ebola comes, the system is tested and really strained. Of course, the international aid, which has reduced, has not helped matters, because the previous system was more efficient, from especially the US government. Now it is quid pro quo, tit for tat, and it's very difficult politically to use such funds, because you compromise your sovereignty, and that limits the...
Dr. Buku, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you this morning.
You're welcome.
Now, to some extraordinary reporting from our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, looking at Cuba's once celebrated public health service, which is now in tatters.
It's found hospital wards without power, barely any medical supplies, buildings close to collapsing. US sanctions are now an all embargo having an impact too.
Stuart and his team have gone undercover in Cuba to see the extent of the problem and the impact it's having on patients.
There's a feeling something big is going to happen to Cuba. It's a country in the midst of an energy crisis, under pressure from the United States, and its government perhaps struggling even to survive. For a week, we filmed undercover in cities across Cuba, documenting a collapsing health service. Well, I'm back in Cuba, and I have to say conditions here are worse than they were the last time I was here in March. The government blames the problem, particularly with power, on the American oil embargo. But this is turning into a crisis for the country, no doubt about it. And we're looking specifically at what's happening to the health service here, and particularly looking at hospitals and how they can cope.
Well, Stuart joins us live in the studio. Stuart, a really extraordinary time to have been there to report, and it kind of leads to my question. The extraordinary reason for the timing is that the US is completely embargoing them at the moment.
That's right, and it started at the beginning of the year, and it's getting worse by the day. And we were only there, in the last couple of months or so.
And the status that you're saying there, the health system, but perhaps even the broader economy, how much has this been decades in the making versus months in the making because of this latest?
Well, I think there is definitely an argument, and I think an accepted thing, that the country's been mismanaged for a very long time, but there's also been sanctions against Cuba for decades as well. But the oil embargo from the start of the year has really ramped this up in a big, big way, and it is declining really quickly. As I say, it's worse than it was only a couple of months ago, and it was pretty bad then. And we wanted to look at the health service because you would think that if there was a sector that perhaps would be protected, it would be that one, and it isn't. It is, like every other sector, completely collapsing. And we are reaching or getting to a point that the whole country could actually collapse. The economy is barely existing. It's got no oil coming in. It's getting not much help from the outside world because it is effectively, there's a blockade of the whole of the island by the United States. The United States continues to threaten Cuba, saying that it needs change, but it's not clear exactly what change they want. And it's left the people sort of like, what are we going to do? My concern, not concern of my team, was because law and order is still pretty good there. But that could easily start breaking down. So that's really why we wanted to look at the health service. And as I say, if it wasn't for the doctors, the nurses, the medical teams working really hard, the ordinary civilians bringing everything that is needed in hospital, it wouldn't be working at all. So it's quite dire.
Well, I mean, we're looking at this from the perspective of the UK, where, look, we moan about the state of the NHS or the cost of living or whatever, but I guess if you contrast it to places like Cuba where you've been, it's like miles away. Like, what is it actually like in these hospitals? Well,
I suppose the way to look at it is that it is a non-functioning, but somehow still limps on. And as one doctor was explaining to me, if you've got... It was particularly famous for its care of cancer treatment. The point is, as he said, if you've got no power... Cancer is treated at certain times. It's quite... the way that it works, it has to be done at a certain time and various things have to happen on time. That's dependent upon power. If you take that out, then the whole of the treatment falls apart. And that is happening continuously. Everything is falling apart. We're now going into the rainy season. You have lots of waterborne diseases that will come out, mosquitoes, etc. They're everywhere already. Can they treat that? Well, the answer is no. They don't have enough medicines to do so. As I say, people themselves are bringing it into the country, but it's just not enough. To compare it to Britain, once upon a time, you could have made that comparison, actually, and possibly, arguably, it's not obviously the same size country, but probably better care, but certainly not anymore.
Where is public opinion there at the moment? I mean, we've seen the US attempts for regime change in Venezuela and Iran and the sort of slightly different tactics each time, where one would think before all this started, the population, it's proven to be very difficult to live with. The population kind of wanted regime change. What's the view there?
With the Cuban diaspora, definitely wants regime change there, and there's a lot of people in Cuba do as well. But most people that I've spoken to say they would just like it to be run better. They would like the sanctions to be lifted so that they could move on. But they're not literally saying everything's got to go. I don't think that doesn't seem to be what most people were saying to us. Now, that could be the fact that they've only known one thing for over 60 years, so it's a whole mindset that they would have to take to change completely. I think they just rather hoping that all of the problems would somehow stop. The continuing sanctions are a real big issue for them. There's nothing they can do without the oil embargo being lifted. But what the United States is going to do has left them all in a sort of sense of limbo. And so what we're not seeing is great anger focusing on the government. And we're not equally seeing, please, President Trump, come in. It's somewhere in the middle. But basically, I wonder whether things are so bad that you end up going, it doesn't really matter what happens. It's impossible. Whatever happens at the moment, it's impossible to continue. Anything would be better than nothing.
Stuart, amazing stuff as always. Thanks so much. Stuart will be back with us next hour. Do check out his full report. Scan that QR code on your screen right now.
Coming up, we're going to tell you why two of Britain's most successful tech founders are joining forces. That's coming up next.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict.
The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Hello again. The rise of oh my goodness, too early this morning. Authoritarian... How do you say this?
Authoritarianism.
There we go. Authoritarianism. Oh, my goodness me. It's been... I need another coffee. Across Europe and the United States will be the topic of fierce discussion at this week's South by Southwest Festival in London.
We're joined now by Dr Agnes Callamard, the Secretary-General at Amnesty International. A very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So a big part of what I think I'm right in saying that you're going to be talking about this week at the conference is how social media has empowered extreme voices on both sides. Is that right?
Well, I mean, if it was only a question of voices, maybe we will not be here. I think we need to understand that authoritarianism, as hard as it is to say, and I have to say it took me a while, is first of all a set of practice. It's a set of laws. It's a set of policies that governments around the world have adopted. So authoritarianism is a global phenomenon. It is embodied in far too many legal structures. And it is increasing. According to people who monitor the health of democracies, what we are confronting right now is a U-turn. We're back to a level of democracy around the world that is close to the 1970s. Which means that 3/4 of the peoples of the world live in a regime that could be deemed autocratic. That's the reality. It's not just about voice.
Can I just ask, what definition are we using? What is being authoritarian? What does that mean?
Well, I think what we're looking at least at Amnesty International, where we have, over the years, identified what we call an authoritarian playbook, which means basically 2 to 5 components are being implemented. Scapegoating of individuals or communities, attacks on freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom to dissent, legalization of practice that in the past would not have been deemed part of the democratic ethos, until we reach a level that will constitute rule by law instead of rule of law. These are some of the components, but the focus on freedom of expression, so the voice matter, the focus on scapegoating and the entrenchment within legal practices, that is, I think, what characterizes what's happening.
You said the percentage of people who live under democracy is now only 25%, and
Roughly.
Takes us back to the 70s. Where was it 20 years ago? And is this because more countries are changing, or is it because countries we think of as democracies, like here, you no longer class as a democracy?
That's part of the problem. In other words, it has been incremental. You know, it is not something that has happened over the last 2 or 3 years. For the last 10 to 12 years, I will say, many organizations like mine have been documenting the erosion of human rights and democratic rights. But for the last 2 or 3 years, we did witness an acceleration of that phenomena, driven by what we call predators around the world. They are called Vladimir Putin, they are called Donald Trump, they are called Benjamin Netanyahu, and what those 3 individuals and many more have done is normalize an anti-democratic discourse.
Do you class America as a democracy then?
Which country?
America.
Right now it is not, no.
Because, I mean, I think some people would say that it is a democracy because people, I mean, you might not like him very much, but people voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah. I mean, of course, authoritarianism in many parts of the world is brought in through democratic processes. This is why the crisis is so deep, is how do we handle the fact that our own principles, our own practice are bringing authoritarianism.
Why are you not classing America as a democracy?
At the moment, some of the key indicators of what constitutes a democracy, including the capacity of parliaments to play their role, the capacity of the legal system to fully play their role, the fact that individuals are not being targeted for their political expression, the fact that dissent is being protected, the fact that migrants are not being chased in the city, all of those things are under threat right now in the United States. So many of what we will consider as part and parcel of a democratic system are under threat. Now, does that mean that in 1 year, a country like the US can move into an autocratic system? No, that is not the case. There is resistance. There are people getting organized, getting mobilized.
But if people vote for someone like Donald Trump, even if you don't really like the choices they've made, or you think that some of the things that he's done, such as, for example, scapegoating migrants are authoritarianism, it's still democratic, isn't it?
No, people are not electing Donald Trump for him to destroy 2 centuries.
Maybe they were.
No.
Well,
I mean, there is no evidence.
There
is no evidence of people giving full power to an individual to destroy. Yeah. Elections is one component of democracy.
That is literally democracy, isn't it?
No, it's not. Actually, democracy is a much more deeper system related to your capacity to do what you're doing now. In a non-democratic regime, this is not happening. And right now in the United States, how many journalists are able to stand in front of the camera and report on what they see happening? They are not. That is what is undermining democracy. Democracy is not just about election. It's about you, journalists, able to do your work. It's about the media diversity. It's about the independence of the media. That is crucial. And around the world, that is being undermined. And you know that far better than me.
Well, they are. I mean, we have a whole team there that do it every single day, as do many of our peers. Even if the mood might have shifted, I think it's a big leap to bracket with Russia, for example, as you did. We are sadly out of time, but we really thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Interesting discussion.
Really interesting, Dr. Agnes Callamard. Now, Britain's most successful tech founders are teaming up to hit back at Silicon Valley's narrative that we can't build global tech companies. We're joined now by James Wise. He's the chairman of the government's Sovereign AI Unit and a partner at Balderton Capital, one of the most successful investors in early-stage tech companies in Europe. And he joins us now. Very good morning to you, James. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Tell us exactly what the government's Sovereign AI Unit is.
So we've been set up to help accelerate some of the UK's great AI successes. Over the last few years, we've seen a number of breakout companies here in the UK, doing really well without our support as it happens. But there's obviously some areas we can always improve regulation, improve support. And so we've been set up to do that. And in my day job at Balderton Capital, obviously I'm working with entrepreneurs across the continent to do the same.
How much of the balance is there from having a unit like yours that is clearly very focused on helping this subsector of companies in the UK versus other pressures that you see on the economy as a whole, some completely out of the government's control, some based on government policies? Is it clashing day to day, or is there a general positive movement of direction?
I think in general, things are going pretty well. If you look at what's happened just over the last 3 or 4 months, there's been over £6 billion invested into UK AI companies, and across Europe we've seen similar trends. There's obviously still challenges in different areas. That may be in energy, it may be in certain areas of regulation, but the Sovereign AI Unit was set up to build on this trend and make sure we do what we can within our small part of government, within DSET, support these businesses. We've been operational for about 2 months, and we're supporting some brilliant entrepreneurs like Sir Demis in his new effort and others.
In terms, one of the big issues that people have with AI is that you need a lot of compute power and it's very energy intensive. Would the industry here across the Europe as a whole, but UK, agree with that and say it's something that the the UK government does need to tackle if we want to be a genuine superpower in terms of AI?
Well, you need different things to be successful as an AI company, right? You need exceptional talent. The UK has a lot of that, as it happens. You need to be brilliant in different industries, and in areas like life sciences and areas like financial services, the UK is already a world leader, and we have AI companies now following on that success. And certainly access to compute is one of those areas we need to do more on. The Sovereign AI Unit, as it happens, is providing compute on Isambard, which is based outside of Bristol, and will be providing more compute up and down the country to support AI companies. It's not everything, though. You know, I think people need to recognise, even in the US, the best AI companies are reliant on Taiwan and companies in the Netherlands to build their chips. Arm, which is a great British company now, I think the UK's most valuable private company, public company, almost £300 billion in value. You know, they provide the chips for all the devices in this room. So it's still a global effort. It will be a global effort on compute, and the UK has a role to play in that.
In terms of what you are pushing the government to do more of in the short term, what's number one on the list?
Number one is making sure that we can get access to the world's great talents, right? And most of that is here in the UK. We want to make sure that internationally, the likes of Anthropic and OpenAI are investing here, building offices here. And number two, it's making sure that that talent feels confident staying here, and Brits feel confident staying here, building businesses to scale and win globally from Britain. And that's something, obviously, we've been doing at Sophy AI recently, but it's also something I've been doing in my day job at Mandelson Capital for almost 20 years now.
There's been talk of late from potential leadership challenges to Keir Starmer that capital gains tax should be taxed at the same rate as income tax. Is that something that would put off some of those great talent and potential wealth creators from setting up businesses here?
Well, what's really important is our companies can access capital, right? And so far, they've done a great job at doing that. If you just look, as I said, in the last few months, there are businesses in the UK now raising billions of pounds to scale. This is great for the UK economy. It's great for them. We need to make sure that continues. A lot of that is also coming from international investors, not so much domestic investors. So really, we want to be doing anything we can to make sure domestic investors benefit from these technology successes.
Just finally, what about relative to the rest of Europe? What are our attractions versus detractions?
Well, a lot of these businesses are built collaboratively, right? So I think this idea of, I don't want to go too far down the overt idea of nationalism. It's important that we have AI capabilities here for defence, for cybersecurity, for our economy, but mostly people working together. I do think, though, historically we've shown great success in life sciences. That's one of the areas I think the UK has a real chance of being a global leader. It probably already is, historically and most recently with things like isomorphic labs. But there's other areas as well which entrepreneurs will find. And, you know, 11 Labs, which is a brilliant company building in voice agents, you know, their Polish team set up in London, now competing globally. 3 years ago, I would have never said the UK is the right place to do that. It happens because the right mix of talent and capital, we are a great place to do it. And so sometimes we just need to follow the entrepreneurs. We can't plan this.
James Weiss, thanks so much for joining us. Great discussion.
Let's have a look now, shall we, at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
It's going to be cooler, a bit more unsettled this week with some widespread showers and some longer spells of rain as well. Britain's going to see some heavy rain actually spreading east across many parts of the country this morning. Southeastern England and the far north, though, look pretty dry. Elsewhere, eastern parts of Ireland and Northern Ireland will be wet. The west will largely dry up. We can expect near average temperatures, tempered by a pretty strong breeze. England will see some prolonged rain spreading to most parts of the country later. Scotland will see rain giving way to more scattered, locally heavy showers.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Jackie has joined us because... Are we going straight to the sport or is this a tease? No, we're going straight to the sport. There we go. I thought we were teasing.
Are we going straight to the sport?
We are going straight to the sport. Oh. There we go, there's no break.
Well, that's taken me by surprise. Yeah. I thought we were going to a break. Shall we talk about parades? Yes. Arsenal having to, you know, bounce... I mean, what a roller coaster of a week, you know, from such elation and such a high receiving the trophy at Crystal Palace to the low depths of despair, losing in penalty shootouts to PSG in the Champions League final, and then having to slap a smile on your face and pretend everything's great and get on a bus and wave at 1 million people. About 1 million people turned out.
I was going to say, I don't think it wouldn't have been fake smiles from the Arsenal players, because they'd just be mirroring this amazing positivity coming from...
Amazing positivity and energy, and red flares, which is sort of quite a relatively new thing. I know it's a thing in Europe, but, you know, on the streets here, red flares is quite a new thing, which were very sad red flares on Saturday night. But yesterday... just thousands, and people climbing up to high vantage points so they could get a better view. And there's some great footage online of people who are in the perfect location to get a view of the players on the bus. 75 people had to be rescued from lampposts yesterday.
I think the whole thing was totally joyous, to be honest. Even as a non-Arsenal fan, you know, families there, you can see banners, people waving, the antics on the bus. You know, I think Ben White chucked Odegaard's glasses into the crowd at one point. You saw Havertz heading a ball into the crowd. It was kind of joyful.
And it was about celebrating a season. It's not about one match, is it? It's about you are the best and thank you for all the joy you've given us and giving us the victory after 22 years. And it was all of that. Just thank you. Thank you for the moment of finally being able to lift a trophy. On these open-top bus parades, I must say I've been on a couple, and it's really hard to get any sense out of people. But people tried really hard. They looked like they were only drinking coffee out of their Arsenal cups. I'm sure they were. But Declan Rice, who's always good at coming to the microphone and was doing a really good rap of his rap, you know, Rice baby. He did that to entertain the crowd, but he also managed to speak some sense as well, as did Kai Havertz, the scorer of the goal in the Champions League final. Let's have a listen.
Honestly, speechless. Lost my voice. I love this team. I love this manager. The joy we can give people is crazy. Next year we're coming back for more.
And we're proud of ourselves. We waited a long time, and I think... Oh, silver!
Do you know what I mean?
Love it. Definitely both only just had coffee.
Yeah, definitely.
He looks like he's about to go skiing with those sunglasses. Some questionable sunglasses.
All the flares, though. You need it for the smoke.
True.
Down with the kids' world. They all like these stupid-looking sunglasses.
Do you think I should start wearing those? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that anyone would think that.
You definitely should. Right, so the contrast that to the PSG parade, it always sort of astounds me when you win the Champions League and then you parade it to your fans. Have a look at this. People always manage to drop that trophy. I mean... It's got massive arms, that trophy. How do people always manage to drop it? I remember the year that, I think it was Real Madrid won it, and they had it at the top of the bus. They dropped it over the edge, and the bus ran over it and squashed it flat.
No way, did that happen?
And it had to be remade, yes. Contrast the sort of celebrations on the streets of London, which was really good-natured, by and large. There were a few arrests, but this was the scene in Paris and across France. When they won the Champions League, that was actually Saturday night, there were something like 780 arrests across France, mostly in the Parc des Princes area, which is obviously where PSG play their football. Vehicles damaged, shop fronts smashed, police officers hurt. They had to prepare 20,000 police officers to man that, just in case they won. In case they won the Champions League.
Would they have not rioted if they'd lost? Is it just like a weird correlation
I think it's just a winning thing, because they won it last year. Obviously, they did back-to-backs, and they had horrendous scenes. It was much worse last year because the police were not ready for what was going to happen. But
surely the expectation to be even worse if they lost.
Well, they didn't.
No, I know, but I'm trying to get my head around what triggers this.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't think they can even wrap their heads around it in France. We should also quickly, the World Cup, as you mentioned, is 11 days away, which is really extraordinary. 17 days until England play their first match, and less for Scotland. I've forgotten which day they played, but it's closer to the beginning than the end. New rules relating to VAR were released last night, and VAR is going to have even more importance at this World Cup, and they've come out with a new set of rules, like a 5-second countdown for throw-ins and goal kicks, so teams can't time waste, 10-second substitutions, so that you've got to do it quickly, get them on, and if you don't do it in the 10-second window, then you've got to wait for the next sort of break in play. No coaching when the goalkeeper goes down injured. This is quite a thing now. Goalkeeper goes down, and then the players all go round to the dugout, to the manager.
Or anything that tries to stop time wasting, I love. But thinking it through, 5 seconds. It's got to be 5 seconds from when the player has the ball in their hand. Because otherwise, it's a bit too. You can't get round to.
It's fast, isn't it? It must be.
Yeah, it must be when you're in position. And Anyway. Also, red cards if you cover your mouth. If there's angry confrontations on the pitch, red cards if you cover your mouth. An assumption, I suppose, that something really awful's been said. So,
yeah, to try and stop that, which I think is great thing. These are all quite. We're against VAR. We're united on this, but these are quite sensible things. Sounds like, and time wasting is. It's not really VAR related, is it? It's just kind of referee related.
And also, they're going. I think it's going to be much tighter. Things like grappling at corners and things. I mean, a lot of these things you can go, oh, Arsenal would have come across.
How long?
Of these
you said it, Jackie.
How long extra do the people that have just played this weekend get off? They're all flying out today?
I don't know this actually, but the team will fly. I think they're flying out today, but I guess the Arsenal players will be given a few days break just to have that differential. But Thomas Tuchel has apparently asked them, if you're going on holiday, please can you do it in the States to acclimatise, which
makes sense.
Not a bad place to go on holiday.
We're out of time for this hour of the show. We'll be back shortly with all the day's top stories.
Very nice.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, good morning from both of us.
The Mandelson files thousands of pages to be released today, exposing more details over Peter Mandelson's appointment as US Ambassador.
A 13-year-old girl dies after being pulled from a river, bringing the total number of deaths linked to the heat wave up to 17.
Cuba's crumbling health system. Sky News goes undercover inside the hospitals that were once celebrated as a model for developing nations.
We'll also hear from the women who say they've been left with life-altering conditions after using the contraceptive injection Depo-Provera.
Plus, a party 22 years in the making will bring you all the scenes and celebrations as more than 500,000 Arsenal fans descend on North London to celebrate their Premier League success.
Hello, thanks for being with us today. We're getting the second drop of the Mandelson files. Hundreds of text messages, emails, WhatsApps, which means another bruising day potentially ahead for the Prime Minister.
The decision to appoint Peter Mandelson to the role of US Ambassador has haunted Keir Starmer's premiership and sparked fury among Labour MPs. Peter Mandelson was, of course, sacked last September, just 7 months into his job, over his relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. He was then arrested in February on suspicion of misconduct in public office, though he has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing.
I just want to jump up and run you through what we're expecting today. So there's going to be a lot of it. The files are expected to run to 1,000 pages. There were 147 last time, and just remember how explosive they were, so it's going to be a big day ahead. So we'll be getting texts from government ministers, potentially some leadership challenges as well, and Morgan McSweeney, the former Chief of Staff to Keir Starmer, who quit over the Peter Mandelson saga. It's thought he pushed for him to get the job. We're not expecting everything, though. One of the things that we won't be getting is the UK security vetting summary. The reason for this is because the Met Police asked the government to withhold the document. And this, of course, is because there is this ongoing criminal investigation as well. Peter Mandelson arrested in February.
Lucy said to discuss it in more detail with us. So, Lucy, what exactly are the sort of rules about what is and isn't disclosed, and do we expect that to be, sadly, for the government, a big focus today?
Yeah, so in terms of, as you were just saying, Sophie, in the first batch of documents that were released, there were some really kind of damaging revelations. I don't think Downing Street is expecting there to be anything beyond, I mean, not that this isn't bad, but kind of beyond embarrassing. Peter Mandelson, ministers kind of cozying up to one another, perhaps. But as you're saying, it comes down to now information that will be and won't be in those files. So the government says it won't be releasing any information that would harm national security or international relations, which I think everybody can probably agree, OK, you can see those reasons why. But this kind of committee of MPs that has been following this process has criticised the Cabinet Office, people that are putting these documents together, saying that some of it they think should be released. And this is all about transparency. So when the government stands up today, Darren Jones in the House of Commons, talking about this release, he will be questioned. He will be no doubt accused of there being some kind of government cover-up. They completely deny those claims. But it will be what isn't included, including that vetting document that suggested Peter Mandelson shouldn't be cleared and given the role. So it will be what's not in the documents today. Yeah.
It's Darren Jones, isn't it, who's given the humble address, who's also been in the headlines a bit today, Lucy, for a potential leadership bid.
Yeah, he has. His team deny that that's happening. However, when you are kind of scoping this out with some MPs, particularly those who are really loyal to Keir Starmer, they aren't denying the fact that if Keir Starmer doesn't run in a leadership challenge, maybe Darren Jones would be the one that they would turn their attention to. And I should point out, these MPs that I've been speaking to want to see Keir Starmer stand in a leadership challenge. They say he himself wants to do that. However, if there did need to be an alternative, say that today's tranche of documents is particularly bad for Keir Starmer, if there was to be another candidate, could it be Darren Jones? And I think, look, let's be honest, even though he's denying it, he's clearly a really ambitious politician. He performs well when he's in the House of Commons, when he comes on and does interviews. you'll probably be silly not to be looking at it as an option.
It's come from somewhere, hasn't it?
Of course it has,
Like someone's linked it to some paper. Threw Lucy a bit of a curveball, but I knew she'd be able to answer it, so it's all good.
Thank you very much.
Lucy, great stuff as always. Now, a sad story next. A 13-year-old girl's become the latest person to die in UK waters in just over a week. 17 deaths in 8 days. Olivia's here with more details of this, and it's the very hot weather and very cold water.
Yes, indeed. Experts have been saying that because of the heat wave, people have been entering the water to try and cool off, but then sometimes the cold of that water can shock them, and there have, very sadly, as you say, been 17 water deaths, many of them children, and the latest, this 13-year-old girl who got into trouble in the River Wharfe in North Yorkshire. Now, she was pulled from the water by emergency services and taken by air ambulance to hospital, but she has very sadly lost her life overnight. Her death follows the death of a woman in her 60s and a man who was with her, also in his 60s, who's in a critical condition in hospital. They got into trouble on Rossall Beach in Lancashire because they were apparently attempting to rescue their dog on Saturday. Emergency services have rescued the dog, but obviously this woman has lost her life and a man is in a critical condition in hospital as a result of it. Just two of the horrendous issues that have taken place with people getting into the water. The police in South Yorkshire are still searching for an 11-year-old boy who went missing yesterday. He was seen going into the River Don in Mexborough, but the public have not seen him come out. It's not clear what's happened, but police say that multiple agencies are still searching for him and specialist officers are looking after his family. I mean, so many awful tragedies that have happened as a result of people enjoying themselves during the heat wave. Forecasters say that temperatures are due to come down this week, and we have got some rain forecast. And I suppose the positive thing about that is that hopefully it will bring an end to this awful spate of deaths due to drowning in the heat wave.
It's just heartbreaking. It really is. And I guess that is the message, isn't it? You might think you're a strong swimmer, but you can't always deal with the shock of the cold water, particularly if it's hot outside. That message, really important to kind of get across.
That does seem to be what experts are saying. Don't just trust yourself as a strong swimmer. Do be careful.
Yeah, thank you, Olivia.
To the Middle East now, and airstrikes resumed between the US and Iran over the weekend as each side claimed to have hit military targets near the Strait of Hormuz. There have also been reports of air defences in Kuwait intercepting missile and drone attacks where a major US base is located.
As in the last 48 hours, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has spoken to leaders of Lebanon and Israel after what you can see on your screen now. Israeli forces made their deepest incursion into Lebanon in 26 years to the castle above the Litani River that you can see on your screens right now. That's, of course, despite the ongoing apparent ceasefire.
Well, some breaking news in the last hour. The Israeli government released a statement confirming they've ordered strikes against Lebanon's capital, Beirut. The statement says, following the Hezbollah terrorist organisation's repeated and ongoing violations of the ceasefire in Lebanon and its attacks against our civilians and cities, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defence Minister Israel Katz have instructed the IDF to strike terror targets in the Dahia quarter of Beirut. Let's bring in our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons. Adam, firstly, update us on the significance of that statement and whether it comes as a surprise or more of the same of what we might have been expecting either way.
I think it's an indication of just how Israel now feels that its strategy is to go in hard against Hezbollah. So broadly speaking, Hezbollah has three big strongholds across Lebanon. It's got one up in the northeast, one, of course, across the south of Lebanon, and Dahia, which is a suburb of Beirut, which has often been used as a sort of political, administrative stronghold and base for Hezbollah. And that is what the Israeli government now saying that they are going to target. There have been videos that have emerged this morning of people fleeing that area because of these warnings that it will come under attack. There was a period of weeks when Israel did not attack Beirut at all, but clearly the gloves are off on that front now. So what you are seeing is a much, much tougher stance by the Israeli military against Hezbollah. And I think it is significant that they're attacking Beirut. Also significant symbolically that they took Beaufort Castle and the Beaufort Ridge yesterday, because this has a kind of emblematic power for both the Israelis and the Lebanese. It was back in 1982, the first Lebanese war, when Israel took Beaufort Castle for the first time. Very famous castle, been there since Crusader times. And then 44 years later to the day, they took it again. Now, the last time the Israelis took Beaufort Castle, 1982, they were there for 18 years. I think there will be plenty in Lebanon who are worrying about whether history is about to repeat itself, because the Israelis, of course, will always talk about this as a buffer zone. They talked about a buffer zone south of the Litani River. Now they're talking about a buffer zone south of the Zerani, so the next river up, and saying this is all a combat zone. There will be plenty of others who look at this and say this isn't a buffer zone, this is occupation, this is the Israelis coming into Lebanon and occupying territory. And yes, the Israelis will say, well, we have to do this because Hezbollah is attacking, and they are. They're attacking people in the north of Israel. They are using drones, they are using rockets. Another Israeli soldier has been killed today. Certainly the rhetoric here is stepping up, so is the military action, and the announcement, not just the fact it's happening, but the announcement by the Prime Minister and the Defence Minister they're going to target Beirut is, I think, another both symbolic and actual big step for the military.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. Now, our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, has been looking into Cuba's health service, and what he's found is really interesting, because this is a health service that was once celebrated, particularly for its treatment of cancer patients, for example, and now, well, it's in tatters. He's found hospital wards without power and barely any medical supplies in sight, and buildings that are close to collapsing after many years of mismanagement. And of course, this comes after many years of US sanctions, but an oil embargo more recently too. So Stuart and his team went undercover in Cuba to find out the extent of the problem the impact is having on patients as well. Let's have a listen.
There's a feeling something big is going to happen to Cuba. It's a country in the midst of an energy crisis, under pressure from the United States, and its government perhaps struggling even to survive. For a week, we filmed undercover in cities across Cuba, documenting a collapsing health service. Well, I'm back in Cuba, and I have to say conditions here are worse than they were the last time I was here in March. The government blames the problem, particularly with power, on the American oil embargo. This is turning into a crisis for the country, no doubt about it. We're looking specifically at what's happening to the health service here, and particularly looking at hospitals and how they can cope.
Well, Stuart joins us now. Stuart, were you surprised by what you found?
I wasn't surprised that it was in a bad state of repair, but I was quite surprised at just how bad it has got, and appears to be getting worse almost week by week. We were there not that long ago, and things were very bad. Blackouts everywhere, rubbish, nothing working. Just getting back and seeing ordinary life's got actually worse. But this time we specifically wanted to look at hospitals and clinics, and enough anecdotal evidence to think things were going to be bad, but I don't think it's as bad as we thought it was going to be, or expected it to be. And I think that's because a system that was in place to look after the hospital system has stopped working in its entirety. And that's been going on for a while. We discussed this before, didn't we? Because huge amounts of money were poured into the sector, the health sector. That stopped happening some years ago, and a lot of money was put into the tourism sector, but not necessarily at the expense of everything. But now the tourism is still getting money, but every other sector is getting nothing. And I think the tourism one will go down as well imminently. And of course, the big question is, what does happen to Cuba? What does the United States want to happen to Cuba? Is it complete regime change, or is it regime compliance, which would be a potential thing that could happen? But what's in it for the United States other than political? Because Cuba doesn't really have anything that the United States needs other than a change of a communist government on the doorstep.
It's interesting you mentioned that sort of regime change, regime compliance. Obviously, in Venezuela, the US has got a sort of halfway house between, well, it's not really, they've got leadership change and now regime compliance, as it were. How bad is the Cuban economy overall? Is the health service a sort of indicator for the broader economy? And has Venezuela seen any improvement since it complied with the US?
So the Cuban economy is a complete and utter disaster, and there is nothing to indicate in any shape or form how that's going to get better anytime soon, other than a relaxation of private enterprise, because there are a lot of people who actually are capable, well-educated, and want to be given the right to have private businesses and do well. And there are some, and they do well. But, you know, you can't keep a business going if you haven't got any power, and as simple as that. And you have a country that's so reliant on oil, it doesn't have any other sort of forms, effectively, of having power. No solar to speak of, little gas. So the whole thing is a disaster. For Venezuela, I haven't been able to go back since Maduro was taken, but we talk to people there all the time. They're saying things have not improved at all, really. Things are still pretty tough. People have been demonstrating against the inflation that's taking place there. But there is always the possibility things will get better in Venezuela because it's got so much oil. You know, it can turn a corner. A country like Cuba possibly can't.
Stuart, really interesting and amazing timing to be going in there again. Undercover for a lot of it. Stuart Ramsey, thanks as ever. Scan the QR code there to watch the full report, but also coming up at 10:30, you can watch it on Sky News today.
Well, we've been talking an awful lot about the Mandelson files today. Big day in Westminster and in politics. We're joined now by the Conservative Party chairman, Kevin Hollinrake, who joins us now. Good to have you with us. So we've got the latest tranche of Mandelson files. We're expecting over 1,000 pages. Do you welcome the transparency?
I welcome some transparency, but we shouldn't forget this never would have come to light had Kemi Baird not held the Prime Minister to account last September in Prime Minister's Questions, where the Prime Minister admitted that he'd known that Peter Mandelson had an ongoing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein after he was a convicted paedophile. Totally disgraceful. Since then, the government's been kicking and screaming in its attempts to not reveal information. We had to then table a motion in Parliament, which meant they had to do, which was supported by some Labour backbenchers, including Angela Rayner, of course. So the terms of the release of those documents are very clear. We don't think they've been complied with. Any information that's really pertains to national security, the arbiters of that, the judge of that, should be the National Intelligence and Security Committee. We know that the Joint Intelligence and Security Committee, Jeremy Wright, who is a Conservative, sits on that committee, came to Parliament with an urgent question recently saying he didn't feel that was happening.
At the same time, though, there is this active criminal investigation, right, that can't be jeopardised. We've got thousands of documents that have been released. A lot of people have lost their jobs over it. I mean, you can contrast that with the States, for example, where there doesn't seem to have been the same accountability. The government needs some credit, right?
Well, certainly things that pertain to the prosecution that would jeopardise the prosecution, I can understand why those things wouldn't be released. But that's not what we're talking about. And as I say, Jeremy Wright specifically said the terms of the agreement with Parliament, of the motion in Parliament, was that the information would be released to that committee, and that committee could decide what was an issue for national security and indeed for things like for the prosecutions. That's not being followed. What is apparent here is the Prime Minister and the people around him and other ministers who might have said derogatory things or said embarrassing things or things that would really mean their positions are untenable, that information seems to us to be withheld, and we see this as more cover-up than making a clean breast of exactly what's gone on here.
Well, we'll have to wait, of course, to see what is released later on today. There was another issue that I was keen to ask you about, because I think it's a really important one. And I know, look, you've got a background running your own business and employing, I think, over 1,000 people, right? So with your kind of businessman hat on rather than your party chair hat on, I was just interested to get your view on the Milburn report into NEET, to young people, right, who are struggling to get on the jobs market. And I know there are some short-term factors in this that you and your party talked a lot about, the rise in national insurance, for example, but there are long-standing issues as well, the kind of collapse of the Saturday job. What's going wrong in this country when we are struggling to get our young people into work in this way.
Yeah, I understand all those things. I mean, we always had a good record in the UK in terms of, regardless of which party was involved, in terms of young people getting into work, and much better than some of our counterparts in Europe, for example, the European Union. That's not the case anymore. Our youth unemployment is now worse than Italy, for example. So there are some things that are that are a challenge for all countries, things like AI and companies using those opportunities to not employ so many people. But equally well, there are some stuff that's happening in the UK that have made things worse and that do relate to the Labour government. And so if you look, youth unemployment was 14.2% of young people were unemployed when the Labour took over. It's now 16.2%. And you actually, and across the piece, hundreds of thousands of people have been added to the ranks of the unemployed because of the extra taxes, because of the extra regulation. You mentioned statutory jobs. A lot of that is about regulation. It's making it difficult for employers to take people on and restricting the amount of hours they work and in unreasonable ways. So we've got to look at the whole system. But what you don't want to do is make things worse, and just sticking taxes on companies and red tape for those companies and things like the family business tax and the family farm tax all deter employment, and that can't be right.
Are you worried about things going back longer term as well? And I'm not trying to point the finger at anyone here, right? You know, it feels like there's a social contract that's been kind of broken down over years and decades, even, where if you kind of work hard, you'll get on. And like now, it's like it's very difficult to own a house, for example. People are linking that to a falling birth rate because, if you're a young person, you'd hope that you do better than your parents, and it feels more and more difficult.
I'm concerned about that. I think in my earlier life, before I started my business, my life wasn't in great shape, but I always had the view that you could build something for yourself by starting a business, buying a house, and we want to make sure young people feel that way. So I'm not saying it's easy, but there are some things you could do. So Labour, when they took over, they scrapped stamp duty discount for first-time buyers, scrapped it, scrapped Help to Buy, scrapped Right to Buy effectively to make those things more difficult. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but don't make it more difficult. And that's what seems to be happening with the government. They don't really understand how the system works.
But you'll take some responsibility for this as well, though. Because, look, and I know that you're pointing to things in the short term that you argue have made it worse, but these are things. I'm trying to talk about some big issues here that stretch back for decades as well. This is not just stuff that's happened in the last year, is it?
No, there's no doubt about it.
Housing in particular, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, you asked me for the information. I mean, in that term in office, we built a 50-year record of net new housing, net housing formations. We helped 1 million people onto the housing ladder through those discount schemes I just mentioned for stamp duty and the like. So, and we've committed, if we get back into office, hopefully we'll in 2029, we'll scrap stamp duty completely on every single primary dwelling, which will help get the economy moving again. And that helps not just the people buying those houses, but also helps people in the wider economy. So there are things you can do. If you cut taxes, cut red tape, and let businesses get on and employ people, all those challenges will be reduced by some of those different actions.
Thank you very much indeed, Kevin Honrake there of the Conservative Party. Coming up, this is a really important story, actually. It's about the contraceptive jab, Depo-Provera. We're going to be hearing from the women who say they've been left with all kinds of medical issues after taking that injection.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
But I'm just going to put some body armour on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Now, a group of women have told Sky News they've been left with brain tumours, blindness and other life-altering conditions as a result of using the contraceptive injection Depo-Provera.
So they're now suing Pfizer over the alleged long-term effects of the drug. Sky's Conor Gillies has been talking to them.
And were you given any warnings? What were you told about the risks involved here?
Nothing really, I can't remember.
Certainly not brain tumours.
Definitely not brain tumours, no, because I wouldn't have stayed on it.
For 20 years, Kirsty used the Depo contraceptive jab. She was told it was safe. Now her life is lived through a blur.
Basically can't see out of the right eye. Like I say, it disfigured my face. So it was confidence, it affected my mental health, because a lot of people ask questions like, what's wrong with your eye? And I know they're just curious, but it totally destroyed me. They're saying that within the next 15 to 20 years, I might lose the sight in my left eye, which is my good eye, because of it overcompensating for the right eye.
Millions use these injections worldwide. Recent studies suggest long-term use carries a higher risk of these tumours. They aren't usually cancerous, but can cause blindness, seizures and memory loss. Tammy used the same Pfizer-made jab for 15 years. She was diagnosed with 4 brain tumours after her symptoms were initially dismissed.
I was told I had dry eye and to just leave, go home, you're not getting a scan. That was on the Thursday. On the Saturday morning, I woke up and my right eye was bulged out.
Were you given warnings that this could be a possibility of brain tumours?
Never. The French did a study and managed to link, meningiomas to the use of oestrogen, so Pfizer's Depo. Then, yeah, they gave that information to the UK in 2024. The government needs to take hold of this. The NHS need to be because the problem we have is people saying it's a very small chance. OK, that is true, but consistent use of this drug for more than a year increases that chance of meningiomas.
Kirsty was told her condition was just one of those things, but with her permission, we've obtained medical records that suggest a possible link in black and white. Her doctors have written to her saying, please now stop the injections as they can promote the growth of meningioma or brain tumours. A legal fight, US-style class action is now underway here in Scotland, possibly worth hundreds of millions of pounds.
You can't put an atomic bomb equivalent of a medical device on the market and put a warning on it and think you can get away with that. It's just not that simple. The product wasn't safe, the warnings were not clear, and the women have suffered the most horrific injuries. They are entitled to compensation.
Pfizer say patient safety is their priority. For years, these women trusted a routine injection. Now they're left wondering how a simple choice became a life sentence. Conor Gillies, Sky News.
Well, in response to the story, a spokesperson from Pfizer issued this statement to Sky News saying, we conduct rigorous and continuous monitoring of all our medicines, including assessments of reported adverse events in collaboration with health authorities around the globe. Depo-Provera has been approved in more than 60 countries. People should talk to their doctor, pharmacist or nurse if they have any concerns or experience any side effects. Did have a little bit of breaking news as well, just to mention that the rugby league legend John Keir has passed away. He was co-commenting for BBC One on the Challenge Cup final at Wembley recently. But the RFL is today paying tribute to him, dying suddenly on Sunday afternoon. having been part of the BBC's commentary team earlier for the Challenge Cup final. We'll bring you more on that as and when we have it.
We'll also be talking about maternity, something that we're really committed to covering here on Sky News. The new Health Secretary tells us he also is prioritising fixing maternity services after Sky News is reporting into the crisis facing mums and babies. Welcome back. Another major global story I want to update you on this morning is the Ebola outbreak. And of course, the epicentre is in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but there have been new possible cases in both Brazil and Italy that we're getting more information about. 19 new cases as well in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which of course is the epicentre, bringing the total number of confirmed cases to 282, with 14 deaths so far. Let's bring in Robert Petron-Messe, the humanitarian lead for Oxfam in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Thanks so much for joining us. Give us an update on the situation in the DRC there, first of all.
Thank you so much for having me. The situation in Eastern DRC is extremely alarming, with Ebola spreading in communities that are already facing conflicts, displacement, and very limited access to health care. Our teams and local partners are hearing alarming reports of people feeling sick and in some cases dying before they are able to reach health facilities or be tested. With limited supplies, weak infrastructure in terms of hospitals, is making it harder to respond quickly. There is also deep concern that the true scale of infections may be higher than currently confirmed numbers. This outbreak is serious on my end and based on reports from the field and requires urgent attention. But is still at a stage where decisive action for us can be prevent much larger crisis. The current outbreak involves the Bundibugyo strain, as you may know, the strain of Ebola, which presents additional challenges, including the absence of a widely deployed vaccine and more complex detection due to its symptoms. This makes early detection, prevention, and community awareness absolutely critical. This is a serious outbreak, but this is a stage where decisive action for us can prevent a much larger crisis.
That's very, clearly put, the kind of call for action right now. Can I ask, because there have been these reports online of protests from people in the DRC towards healthcare workers because they're worried about the handling of the dead. I mean, it looks like a very, very difficult situation on the ground. Is there a lot of mistrust of the authorities?
The mistrust is one of the significant challenge in the field. There is significant concern about undetected community transmission. When cases are not recorded, it's become much harder to trace contacts, isolate suspected cases, and break chain of transmission. One of the other issues is a lack of proper health infrastructures due to funding cuts, conflicts. Is also making it harder for remaining health facilities to cater and detect cases before it gets worse. That's why breaking chain of transmission depends heavily on community-level action, including access to clean water, hygiene materials like soap, strong infection prevention practices, trusted communication with communities. Containing Ebola depends not only on treatment for us, treatment centers, but also on community having accurate information, trust, and access to basic healthcare and hygiene services. We have to work on the community awareness. We have to deep engage with community leaders to break the behaviors, to communicate extensively about the virus and the way the virus is transmitted and which practices should be put in place for us to be able to break the chain of transmission and to face the virus and limited and to be able to limit the spread of the virus. As you may know, it's not only the Ituri province currently affected, the virus also spread in North Kivu and South Kivu, and numerous of cases are already reported in these provinces. We have to act now to be able to break the transmission chain.
Robert, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Now, over the last few months, Sky News has led a major investigation into what it is really like giving birth in the UK today. The whole point of it was to try and amplify the voices of the women and the dads who've contacted us, trying to tell their story about what they found when they gave birth in the UK.
We spoke to the new Health Secretary, James Murray, this morning, who's committed to prioritising the crisis.
The number of women dying in childbirth is going up. I find this statistic absolutely staggering. I kind of feel like it's one of those things that I don't really understand why we're not shouting about it every single day. And women that I've spoken to feel like they're on a bit of a merry-go-round. They feel that there's been lots of different health secretaries, lots of different reviews, and, nothing's actually really been done, nothing's changing. Can you commit to prioritising this as Health Secretary, now?
Yeah, I absolutely can. And I chaired the the task force that we've got set up in government to oversee the work to improve maternity services in my first few days in the role. And the most powerful part of that for me, the bit that really stuck with me from those first few days in the role, was meeting some of the families who had lost their baby, mothers, fathers, the families there. And that really hit me. You know, in this job, you can sit and look at papers, you can look at budgets. Meeting someone who's been through that situation is horrific. And you know what Wes did before me in terms of prioritising maternity services was really important. And I'm not losing a second in picking that up and making sure it has the same commitment that it had under him.
James Murray there, and a reminder, a special programme coming up on the state of maternity care in the UK on Sky News this week. Sarah J. and me will spend 2 days at Coventry Hospital and will present the UK Tonight live from there on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Now, our next guest, Gabriel Nussbaum, might be better known as That Money Guy on TikTok, where he has 1.5 million followers, giving money tips, investment tips, and how to best prepare your finances there. And he joins us now. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We're planning to do this around a big report on pensions came out a couple of weeks ago, and I want to get to that in a moment. But we also just last week had the update in terms of people's energy costs going forward. It'll be going up 13% from July. Obviously, a big increase for a summer month, but at the same time, perhaps in light of the war, could have been worse. What are some of the tips you have around typical money saving as we come into the summer months, kind of to help people to prepare for that?
Yeah, so like you said, not as crazy of an increase as some people who were scared for might have been preparing for, but still an increase nonetheless. So I think the one thing that I always say around this topic in general is loyalty needs to go out the window when it comes to any kind of bill. Now, this could be energy-specific bills, but it could also be your Wi-Fi contract, your phone contract, anything that you're paying a monthly subscription for. Go and find yourself the best rate as soon as you can. There are so many websites that allow you to do this, where you can check, compare, and I would say throw loyalty out the window, get the best price that you can possibly get for yourself.
Clearly, the war's had a big impact on interest rates as well, and mortgages on top of that. What are the latest kind of tips you're giving people on that if they have got deals coming up?
Well, when it comes to a mortgage or any kind of renewal, what you want to do is be prepared. Preparation is always key with these things. Often you can start thinking around 6 months before renewal to start to check what are current rates, what's the best deal that I can get. And up until the actual renewal happens, you can constantly be resetting that amount if rates do look like they're dropping. So if you can lock something in 3-6 months in advance, that is pretty low. And in 6 months, everything spikes. You'll have that rate that you had locked in, and you'll be laughing, and same vice versa. If things change the day, 2 days before your renewal happens, you can go and get that lower rate. So preparation is always key with these things.
Talk to us about the big pensions report, because it hasn't been talked about that much because of a lot of other news out there, but one of the warnings from it was quite stark in your eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. So this report came out essentially telling that around 15 million people are currently under-saving towards their pensions. Now, these are scary numbers, but when we dived into it, it actually got even worse. It said almost 50% of people are, not saving anything towards their pension at all currently, and half of those people are in work. So you're just seeing that people are just not being prepared for this massive life, moment where there's no more income coming in, and you need to be fully prepared for whatever hits you. And this was actually a question that I put to the Prime Minister off the back of that report, saying, what's going to happen? Because auto-enrolment is an incredible programme that came in and has massively boosted pensions in this country, but I don't think it's going far enough.
I mean, compared to those who do have guaranteed salary pensions, final salary pensions, the private sector pensions is a long way behind, as you say. It does then raise the question why, and they're not massive changes, but at the margin, a lot of the policies that the government have brought in haven't further incentivised people to save more.
No, so when I did put this question to the Prime Minister, his answer was around cost-cutting measures. How can we get more money into people's pockets? And that was constantly what he was referring to. But what I would actually love the government to look into off the back of this report is more incentives towards pensions. So currently, this 8% number, which is salary sacrifice, 5% from you, 3% from your employer, sounds great in practice. But when you actually dive into the numbers, that is still not enough to get people towards a comfortable retirement. So in other words, I think that, you know, the government needs to look at 5 and 5, 10%, 12%. Those are the numbers that actually get people towards a comfortable retirement, because current stats say that people are currently retiring with anywhere between 4 to 6 times on average less than they need for a comfortable retirement. That's what's happening right now. And this report says it's only going to get worse for the next generation.
Yeah, it's a big problem building for sure. Tell us about ISAs, because there were some changes in the budget. There's been quite a lot of pushback to some of those changes, but it looks like they'll go ahead either way. Just remind us of where we stand on them and what your advice to people is.
Absolutely. So coming in from next April or the next tax year, we're looking at changes to the cash ISA specifically, where the cap has always been £20,000 on your entire ISA allowance. So that didn't mean if you went cash or if you went stocks and shares. There's a few others, but we'll stick with those two for now. But the cash ISA is dropping down to £12,000. So you still have that entire £20,000 allowance, but specifically being allowed to put into the cash ISA is £12,000.
And in terms of how that plays out for people, do they have to open a separate one?
Yeah, so every single year you can open as many as you want in terms of as many cash ISAs as you want, as many stocks and shares ISAs as you want. But if you did want to use your entire £20,000 allowance next year, which I know is a very luxurious position to be in, only 12 of that can be put into the cash ISA, but stocks and shares ISA can still have the full 20 if you want it to.
Gabrielle, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to take a quick look at the weather next.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
It will be cooler, more unsettled this week with widespread showers or longer spells of rain. Britain will see locally heavy rain spreading east across many parts this morning, but south-eastern England and the far north look mainly dry. Elsewhere, eastern parts of Ireland and Northern Ireland will be wet, while the west will largely dry up. Expect near average temperatures, tempered by a stiff breeze. England will see prolonged rain spreading to most parts later, while Scotland will see rain giving way to more scattered, locally heavy showers.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Coming up, we are going to be talking Arsenal and those incredible celebration pictures with the parade across London.
The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
With respect, Minister, answer the question. It's you.
Hello and welcome, I'm Cathy Newman. So could the outcome of these elections be manipulated? New me, new show, new furniture. Hard news needs a hard chair. I feel like I'm in therapy. Oh, there's room for two on this one. Do you think people will take me seriously with my feet up?
Sorry, madam, but we're closing now.
Oh, sorry. Sofa sorted, let's get this show on the road.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Let's look at the sport now, shall we?
Yeah, let's. Jack is back.
Despite talking about fish and chips in the break,
Yeah.
I just get us really hungry. The Arsenal parade, did you go? Were you tempted to go?
I was very tempted. No, I didn't. I couldn't go yesterday, but it was great to have it there for all the fans, obviously mainly, but for the players to lift them, and particularly Eze and Gabriel after those missed penalties.
Yeah, I think it was really important for them to sort of get on that bus, slap a smile on your face after this such lows of the way they went out of the Champions League final. I mean, they were just so close. But so close isn't good enough, is it? And for those who missed penalties, it must have been absolutely devastating. And apparently, it does take a long time to get over a penalty miss like that because it's a bit traumatic. But to just look down from a bus and see 1 million people and red flares and loving you, just loving your work for the whole season, and for them to bring home that Premier League trophy and display it on that bus, I think it was just, a roller coaster 48 hours, finishing on a high. And most of its players are now going off to a World Cup with their various countries, and I think it's a great way to finish the season. 75 people had to be rescued from up lampposts, apparently.
Jackie?
No, but you know what? My son did climb a lamppost.
Did he?
But he's very tall and managed to get down again. I told him off climbing lampposts. You never get any good sense, really, from players on these buses, because it's a party. You're celebrating. They're sick of interviews. They're absolutely over it. But Declan Rice, who's always good to come to the microphone when nobody else wants to, did speak, and so did Kai Havertz, the scorer of the goal in that Champions League final, although he didn't really make much sense. Have a listen.
Honestly, speechless. Lost my voice. I love this team. I love this manager. The joy we can give people is crazy. But next year we're coming back for more.
And be proud of ourselves. We waited a long time, and I think,
so nice. Yeah, there was a lot of that. I mean, and in contrast, actually they were in good spirits, weren't they? They seemed like they were really enjoying themselves. The PSG parade was actually not quite as elaborate. It was a much simpler thing, but they obviously could show the trophy. And I don't know what it is about teams who win the Champions League trophy. They always want to try and kill the trophy. Real Madrid did actually squash it once when they had it. Anyway, it seemed fine. They had a meet and greet with Emmanuel Macron. And contrast the Arsenal pretty much good-natured event to what happened in France, which was very ugly and awful scenes. 20,000 police had to be ready just to be ready for the win. What would happen when they won? And when they won, that's what happened. There were 780 arrests made, shop fronts bashed in, vehicles set on fire. It was really unpleasant. Not as unpleasant as last year when they won, but still.
It's bizarre.
They were sort of ready for it this time. I mean, it's really hard to figure out, isn't it?
I can't get my head around it. And these are PSG fans, then. It's not like opposition fans or people who hate PSG. I just can't.
And it's not just. It wasn't Paris, although mostly Paris, but it was actually across the country. All of their fans. Very, very, very strange reaction to winning the Champions League.
Also in Paris?
Also in Paris.
Oh, I thought we were doing the tennis next.
We were going to do the tennis, but if you can just hold that for 1 second. Just the new,
jumping.
Just quickly, new rules. While we're on football, VAR, new rules for the World Cup. 5-second countdown for throw-ins.
Yeah, I like this.
Which is good, like a shot clock sort of thing. 10-second substitutions. Red cards for holding your hand over your mouth if you're in a kind of angry confrontation on the pitch. No wrestling at free kicks, or certainly they're going to try and clamp down
good luck policing that one.
on the grappling at a free kick, which we've all come to kind of know and love. And we should also mention James Milner, who retired from football this morning.
Just seen that.
Age 40. Amazing career. 24 seasons in the Premier League. What a pro.
Played more games than anybody else.
Well, you would if
in the Premier League.
But, I mean, to be so good for so long and finish your career right. Brilliant. Just quickly in France, as you were saying, let's quickly go and see what happened in the tennis, because two 19-year-olds are kind of taking it by storm. This is the start of the second week. They're in it. Last night, João Fonseca, if you don't know the name, you will do. He's going to be a big star. He put Djokovic out in the last round and he backed it up. This is what happened. He defeated the two-time French Open finalist Casper Ruud to book his quarter-final spot in the men's draw, 7-5, 7-6, 5-7, 6-2. He will now play 20-year-old Jakub Mensik for a place in the semis. Big things at hope for him. And then 19-year-old Rafa Nadal, Spaniard as well, from Madrid. He came from 2 sets down to beat Pablo Carreño Busta to also reach the quarterfinals. It was just his second appearance.
I mean, I'll be honest, I
19.
was one of these people who was like, oh, Alcaraz isn't in it, Sinner's been knocked out.
Well, so many
is it going to be boring?
People thought that.
But not.
Yeah. So we've got two new stars to look out for. And
love it.
And now that those two big guns are out, it's literally anyone's game.
Good luck to all, particularly the young guys. Jackie, Cressa, as always, thanks so much. We're going to take a quick break. When Sky News Today comes back, of course, there'll be some breaking news coming with the release of some Mandelson file details. Don't go anywhere.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.